Nathan Eovaldi came to the Rangers with a big game reputation, and he has lived up to it, winning both clinchers to this point. Diaz swings and misses. Altuve's down on strikes, and Eovaldi goes back-to-back Ks, and he strikes him out on 3 pitches. Nathan Eovaldi, the bigger the spot, the bigger the game, the better he is, and he's thrown 6 again.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. That's what it sounded like yesterday as the Rangers win once again. They appear to be headed to the World Series this year. We'll see. Still a lot of time.
Jesus, jumping in front of
the World Series, but 2-0.
Putting the cart in front of the horse, man.
They have not yet lost in this year's postseason. One of the best starts to a playoff run that we've ever seen in the history of Major League Baseball. Only the 2014 Royals started out a postseason with more consecutive wins.
Of course.
Alex, one of the things... That was a very mediocre Royals team in 2014. In all seriousness,
you're mediocre.
Had a really nice run.
Is that the year they won it all, or is that the year they lost?
That was the Madison Bumgarner year.
Shame.
It was a fun year. It was a great year, especially that last game of the World Series.
You think so?
Man, I don't know, big boy. I don't know if I've ever been more excited than that year that Madison Bumgarner just dominated.
Mother Bleeper won 3 postseason or World Series games.
What a legend! What a legend!
So speaking of Madison Bumgarner, Cardinals looking for a guy that can can play like that in the postseason. Really, they're looking for a pitcher that can pitch like Nathan Eovaldi can in the postseason.
Blech.
What are you talking about?
I know.
Nathan Eovaldi's amazing in the playoffs.
I just wanted to jump in front of Cardinals fans that were like, Nathan Eovaldi, he's not good.
Really nice number 2 starter. I would say the same thing is true of Jordan Montgomery. Really solid number 2 starter. And Alex, going into this offseason, that might be the class that the Cardinals are shopping in. Sonny Gray, Jordan Montgomery. I think even Aaron Nola, like whether you want to classify him as a 1 or a 2, doesn't really matter. He's technically a 2 for his team because Zach Wheeler's one of the best aces in Major League Baseball right now. I think what the Rangers are showing us is that if you build around the right number 2 starters and you've got enough of them in your rotation, you can still go on a really good run in the postseason, but you got to get it right. You have to bet on the correct players if you're going to build that way.
Yeah, and this is my concern with the Cardinals in terms of banking on the right pitchers, although it does seem like if they're as aggressive for Sonny Gray as they're making it out to be, that's the right type of pitcher that you're supposed to be aggressive with. The problems have always been the Mike Leakes. They've gone overseas and went after like the KKs and said, these are the guys that will be pitchers who can pitch above expectations. These are the guys that we're sneaky good at finding. And they've never lived up to those expectations. What I hope is that the Cardinals can get back to something like this and do what the Rangers have accomplished in terms of finding all of these guys that you look at originally and you're like, man, I don't know if this is the way that you're going to be able to win a World Series. Nathan Eovaldi, Gray, all of these other pitchers, but then all of a sudden it's boom, you get the best out of them. Sonny Gray's a good start here, but I still want to see them be aggressive and find the top dog.
Yeah, I think the fact that you've seen Aaron Nola, Sonny Gray, guys that I think are perceived as 2 across the industry, are pitching well in the postseason, and those guys are free agents. Like those guys should be circled, and the Cardinals are making it clear to anybody that'll listen that Sonny Gray's their top target this offseason. Those are the kind of guys that you're going to be searching for this offseason to try and get. Getting a number 1, the only way they're going to be able to do that is in the trade market. Dylan Cease is probably the only guy.
Unless you believe Aaron Nola to be that.
Yeah, if
I
you
also believe Nola to be a 2, though.
I think Nola's a 2, but I don't think they're going to have – they'll have interest. I don't know if they'll be able to sign Blake Snell or a Yamamoto who's going to have a huge bidding market there. So you got to look for the 2s that are going to propel their game to the playoffs, and you've seen Gray and Nola do that. And I think those are going to be the guys that are going to be circled and circled and circled for the St. Louis Cardinals to go and target because they have shown in the past that they can propel themselves in the postseason.
And I don't think they're alone. Like, if the Cardinals ended up going into this offseason and saying, you know what, we're going to attack this thing with quantity over, like, the top-level quality, I think there's worse ways to go about it. Like, if they decided, for example, to sign Sonny Gray and Jordan Montgomery, and then they add another, like, number 3 starter via trade. They go out there and they get, I don't know, Edward Cabrera from the Marlins, or one of those back-end young starters from, like, Brian Wu from the Mariners. I could see how that would end up working out pretty well for the Cardinals next year. I don't think that they should be considered, quote-unquote, cheap because they went that route, because there's really only one guy that we're putting in that criteria of, like, number 1 start. You could technically say 2. I don't think Blake Snell's coming here. So if we write that one off, really the only other dude that's a legit number one is Aaron Nola. That's not on the trade market. So I could see an Eduardo Rodriguez fitting into this criteria that we're talking about right now. I don't think it should surprise anybody if he comes in as like a 3.7 ERA next year during the regular season and does his best Nathan Eovaldi impression going into the playoffs next year. Charlie Morton, I'm really curious to see what happens with him in the Braves. He's technically on a club option for $20 million next year. I wouldn't be shocked if the Braves say, you know what? We want to try to upgrade from him. Maybe the Braves are a team that try to go out and get a Jordan Montgomery. It's similar money for next year, most likely. Maybe they're in on the Sonny Gray market. I don't know what they're going to ultimately decide to do, but that's another guy that maybe you would have a little bit of interest in. Hell, Andrew Heaney, who is a part of that rotation right now down in Texas. Maybe he's somebody that ends up coming available off of his player option. There's a lot of guys in this middle class of the free agent market. If you pick correctly from that group, you can end up getting the same type of results that you would be getting by signing somebody to a 5-year, $125 million contract. We've seen a lot of those go wrong as well.
And the way that I view like a successful framing of the offseason for this Cardinals team is to target that number two, like the top player as the number two, so that you can spend the money on those. If it's Sonny Gray, if we believe Aaron Nola is the number two for this team, target that player in free agency and get aggressive on the trade market to find that number one. And if it's not Yamamoto, because Yamamoto could be that number one, you're going to have to spend significant assets for that. But other than that, like, this is the type of trade that you can pull off to where you find a guy in another organization that they view him as, you know, his ceiling's a 2. Right now he's a 3.
Pablo Lopez.
But the Cardinals say, no, we see one potential here. We see maybe not ace, but a guy who can outpitch everybody else in our rotation. We're going to get aggressive, and we're going to trade somebody off of our roster that we don't want to. Because the hard part is we're trying to make all of these guys via free agency as 2s to be 1, whether it's Aaron Nola or Blake Snell. Although Blake Snell is a 1, you don't have really a shot at getting that. If you go after that, and then you kind of go that lesser tier to get the number 2, then it feels like you're not doing enough and being aggressive enough to actually put the rotation in place to be a winning team.
See, I think the guy that you could do that with is Sonny Gray, honestly. Like, I would just say go get
pitching like a 1?
Yeah, I would say go get that guy in free agency. Like, he's available. I know for some reason he has become like a we don't want that guy type of player here in St. Louis. I mean, he has a 2.9 ERA over the last 2 seasons. He's been one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. He's going to get Cy Young votes this year in the American League. I would say I'm incredibly interested in that player. And the Cardinals are making sure that everybody knows, hey, we want Sonny Gray.
That's not good strategy.
That guy is available, and we want him here in St. Louis. Get him on the first flight to St. Louis, please. We're not technically tampering because we're not saying it publicly, but if you are a reporter, please put it out there that we want Sonny Gray. Sonny said in his end-of-season press conference when he was made available to the Minnesota Twins media, hey, I want to go where I feel wanted. And the Cardinals were like, come to Papa.
Yeah.
we want you so
Cardinals
badly.
are like, you'd be great and a great guy if you ever needed to date our daughter. Makes sense.
If there's anything else that we have learned from the postseason, though, Alex, on the non-pitching side of things, man, your superstars just got to play well, and that's what we're learning from the Phillies once again this year.
Kyle Schwarber ready to lead off. First ball swinging, and there it goes. An ambush by Schwarber, and it's 1-0 Phillies. Schwarber in the regular season. Now Harper deep into right center, and he'll watch this one fly. Second home run of the inning. Drives out into right, got some heat on it, and this is gonna be up and out of here. Castellanos, he's on a home run binge. On the ground, a hot one, backhanded Bohm. Throw to second, out, stop, throw to first. It's in time, and it's a double play, and the game is over.
Why do you think the Phillies are winning?
Good pitching.
Because they signed Bryce Harper and we didn't.
Yeah, I mean, there's part of that, yes. The Phillies are winning because their superstars are playing like superstars, and we don't have to make this more difficult than it is. Their top 2 starters have been unbelievable, Aaron Nola and Wheeler. You look at their lineup. Hey, Bryce Harper, 1,500 OPS. Trey Turner, 1,400 OPS. Nick Castellanos, 1,400 OPS. JT Realmuto, 900 OPS. And then last night, finally, after being really quiet to start out the postseason, Kyle Schwarber gets in on the act with a leadoff home run to open up the game. That's why they're winning. They're winning because their superstars are performing like superstars. Hey, why did the Cardinals lose last year, Alex? Why did they get swept out of the wild card round? Because their superstars didn't perform like superstars. Nolan Arenado couldn't buy a hit. He was hitting the ball hard as hell, and he couldn't buy a hit. Paul Goldschmidt was going through this massive slump in the month of September, and it continued into the month of October. That's it. End of story. Sometimes this stuff is easier than we said it to be. The same reason why the Astros had so much success early on in this postseason. Man, Yordan Alvarez is unbelievable. That guy is hitting everything that is coming his way. He has 9 hits in the postseason. 8 of them are extra bases, including 6 that have gone for home runs. Like, that's where the offense is coming from for the Houston Astros so far. The Texas Rangers, Corey Seager's unbelievable. What they're getting right now from Marcus Semien, they paid for him to be this player. If the Cardinals are going to go on a run next year in the playoffs, they need their superstar hitters to play like superstars, and they need the pitchers that they signed this offseason to come up big the way that they have for Philly and Texas.
And I know I get a lot of pushback from you guys when I say it, but that's always my concern. And I know, T-Bone, it's a short sample size.
It's only 3 games.
Don't care.
That's not what I sound like.
Just a little. But
I'm
I guess technically the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I would like to see this team be able to perform on the big stage. Like you've got players in Philly, you've got players in Texas and Houston that when they step to the plate and their team's down by a run and it's the 7th inning, I don't sit there and say, well, this game's over. I sit there and say, watch out, because Bryce Harper's going to do something, or Castellanos, or Schwarber. And I don't get that same feel with the Cardinals. Now, maybe they can change my opinion wholeheartedly this upcoming season. Look, I like the fact that Wilson Contreras is here. I'd like to see him in the playoffs because he's performing in the playoffs. Jordan Walker seems like a guy that doesn't care what type of stage he plays on. But it all comes back to the 2 big dogs that you're talking about with his team, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. And again, it's a small sample size, but it hasn't looked good in those small sample sizes.
Yeah, I think if you get to the playoffs, and again, you got to get to the playoffs first, but if they get to the playoffs in the 2024 season and Goldie and Arenado just don't hit again, there is no more small sample size. This is who you are. You're a guy that doesn't step up on the big stage in October. And to BK's point, and what we've seen across baseball this year, your stars don't hit, you're not going anywhere. Look at Toronto. Toronto didn't do anything offensively. Vladimir Guerrero didn't hit in that series. They get bounced in the wild card series by the Minnesota Twins. So as much as I do push back on that notion on Arenado and Goldie, there is no more excuses after this year. They make the playoffs, those guys don't hit, then it's going to be something that's going to be with them the rest of their careers, that they just don't perform in October. Contreras has proven that he can do it, but there's still a lot of young guys that we don't know a lot about. Does Nootbaar raise his level when you get to October? Does Donovan? Does Nolan Gorman if he's on the roster? Does any of the pitchers in the bullpen? Ryan Helsley ended up blowing a save in that game against the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I think that was injury related, but there are a lot of question marks on how this team will perform in October. Now, they got to get there first, but there will be a lot of questions that will be answered about their October ability this year.
It's the A-Rod thing. A-Rod was considered a loser in the playoffs up until the point where he finally was able to win one with the Yankees. That is what we're dealing with right now here in St. Louis. What we have seen early on in the very small sample size from Arenado and Goldie has not been particularly impressive. Now, to be fair, Goldie has had some moments in the postseason as well, but especially with Arenado, it's an incredibly small sample size, and it's been bad. So, if they're able to get there next year, he's got to come through, man, because there comes a point in time where that does become what you're known for is, hey, the biggest moments, guy doesn't show up. And whether it's fair or not, doesn't much matter. Tony Romo, if you look back at his fourth quarter numbers, one of the best fourth quarter quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. However, what is he known for? He's known for blowing the big moments. He finds a way to come up short when it matters most. Kirk Cousins, you look at his quarterback rating on primetime games. It's actually really good. Really, really good. But when the moments matter the most, what's he known for? Losing in the biggest moments in primetime games. That is what the Cardinals are dealing with right now. And until they have success like the Phillies are, like the Rangers are, that's what they'll continue to be known for. So this offseason, you got to make sure you hit on the pitching. That's how you get to the place where the Rangers and the Phillies currently are. But then you need your big bats to be able to come through in the biggest possible moments. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, speaking of the NFL, got some big-time takeaways coming out of last night's game, which was not particularly impressive from either side, in my opinion. And it continued a theme of poor quarterback play this week. Is that going to be a trend in the NFL, or was this a one-off? We'll get to that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, speaking of offense, Alex, I've got an optimistic outlook on the Blues offense that we'll get to coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friend and insurance agent, Tracy Bibb. Look, with this type of weather, you know it's going to start getting colder. You're probably going to see those hailstorms every once in a while, which takes out your roof. Or maybe you've been driving and you've been in a fender bender lately. All of these scenarios are why I have this great relationship with Tracy Bibb, because she's my insurance agent, and why she's so close is because she's always available. And when it comes to stuff like this, your home insurance, your car insurance, you've got to make sure you have the best coverage and have the best customer service, because when something happens, and that's what they preach, it's not a matter of if something happens, it's when something happens. And when it does, you want to make sure you have somebody to contact. Tracy's always available. Heck, she's contacting you, letting you know about price increases, letting you know about trends around with insurance, making sure you understand what falls underneath the umbrella that you have with Allstate. So give Tracy a call today. Have her tell you about the free non-committal quote. Just tell her I sent you, Alex Ferrario, and she'll walk you through everything. Heck, she'll even cancel your previous insurance agent. 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
Everly will be the shooter. Brings it in on Bennington. Cuts it into the middle. Everly waits, shoots, save Bennington. Bring out the Zamboni. It's a home opener win for the St. Louis Blues, who picked up 3 out of 4 points on the first 2 games of the year. 2-1 the final tonight.
So what it sounded like Saturday night as the Blues win against the Seattle Kraken alongside Alex and T-Bone. I'm BK. Blues back on the ice today. We'll get to some of the takeaways from that here in just a little bit for their morning skate. Alex, they're off until Thursday. But one thing that I am curious about is how the defensive system is playing into their offensive struggles right now. Now, we talked about this yesterday, and I don't want to say I came off as an alarmist, but I came off as, I would say pessimistic relative to some Blues fans about what the offensive outlook is long term.
Sure, Chicken Little.
And that is because the offense has really struggled early on in this season. It's been a lot of one and done. They're not generating a ton of chances. They've been in their own zone a lot. It's just not what you want to see. And it's not particularly appealing to watch either. Now, that doesn't matter. If they win, that is what Blues fans are going to care about. And ultimately, hey, man, if you're an Iowa football fan right now and they're going to win their own division, they might be scoring 17 points a week, but you don't care about that as long as they're getting the wins that are, and that's what matters. Now, that being said, if you're looking for a reason for optimism, Alex, I think it's this. You are trying to learn and implement a new defensive system. Now, this is not earth-shattering stuff. most of these guys have played this system at some point in their respective careers. But playing it in games against NHL competition night to night is a little different than working on it in training camp or working on it throughout the offseason. So one thing that could be happening here is they're all so focused on making sure they're right in their own zone and getting to the right areas that it's taking away from their ability to just play. And that's not inherently a bad thing, but it takes time to be able to start having more of those reactionary plays as opposed to thinking through things, right? And so if you're optimistic about the offense, your hope is probably, hey, as they get this thing figured out, as they start to get more comfortable with their defensive system, the offense will come moving forward. Do you think that is something we can expect, or is that just something we're hoping for right now, Alex?
No, I think it's something you can expect. I mean, look, the offensive side of the game, typically at the beginning of the season, offense is at an all-time high because defenses are still trying to kind of get the cobwebs off, and the goaltendings are doing the exact same, especially when you go through preseason. And that's why you typically see a higher goals scored around the league in the first week or two of the season, and then it kind of goes back down to earth. Right now, you're seeing the other side of it, but I really believe it's because the Blues have switched their scheme. And they did this with the same defensive group, with guys that were accustomed to Mike Van Ryn, who have been here for the last 2-3 seasons, and you're changing it all up. And I really look at this as the Blues are putting such an emphasis on their defensive side of the game because it was so bad last year that they're taking a little off the top for offense, which is understandable. Like, sure, that game against Dallas was the prototypical, we don't want to make a mistake because it's a new system. We haven't tried it as a full team because preseason is 8 games where you're playing with guys in the minors, and now we want to see it work against a team that's expected to be one of the best. And it did. Seattle was just, frankly, it was sloppy in the first period and then just felt like it fell apart. Offense gets to the point where you get comfortable with it and you say, okay, now we can take some chances because we trust our goaltender, we trust our system. Let's try and take some chances. And when you take chances, that's when you pounce. But the other fact is, I went back and looked at the 2019-2020 season, the year after they won the Stanley Cup with Craig Berube. That was a team that averaged about 28.7 shots per game, and they scored the 12th most goals in the National Hockey League. It's just, Craig Berube's always been a get comfortable in low-scoring games. So this is just a trend early on in the season that when the defense feels comfortable in how they're playing, the offense starts to take more chances, and your power play starts to get a little bit more comfortable.
Not to push back too much, but that 2021 season, the team also had really high level of high danger chances.
No, the 2019-2020 season, the year after they won the Cup.
That team had a lot of high danger chances. That was a team that was winning games and scoring goals because they were getting the level of chances that you would be looking for. This team's doing nothing. Like, offensively, it's been really ugly in the first 2 games of the season. Again, that is not to suggest that anybody should panic about it because it's 2 games, and in any 2-game stretch over the course of the season, you can find a team that struggles. The Toronto Maple Leafs, who have a great offense, Edmonton, who has a great offense. There will be 2-game sample sizes where they look worse than what the Blues have in the first 2 games of the season. That being said, that the chances just aren't there. That's what's confusing to me, is that I look at this roster and I think to myself, okay, they've got offensive playmakers that are capable there. And so I do wonder, like, when a player's not performing up to expectations, typically I think to myself, they're probably hurt in some way. And when this team is not performing up to offensively our expectations coming into the season, it makes me think they're thinking too much. That being said, the defense has been really impressive. And Alex, one guy that you've been on an island for over the last few seasons, as all Blues fans take out their pitchforks and they're yelling at you, screaming from the mountaintops.
I feel it.
Is Colton Parayko. Now, coming into the season, Doug Armstrong told everybody exactly what he's expecting from Colton Parayko moving forward. Here's what he had to say.
Colton being an offensive catalyst, that's not going to be his game. That's not his game. I think when he came in as a rookie, he got some points early. Pucks were going in the net for him, and there was the hope that there was a larger offensive side to him. I think what we found out now is for him to have a successful year and a successful career, it's going to be more in that Jay Bouwmeester style of player where he's uses his skating, defends well with his stick, kills plays down low, kills cycles, makes an initial first pass, going to play 20-plus minutes a night of hard minutes, probably not a lot of power play, if any, second unit potentially at certain times. So his job is to play against the other team's best players.
He just labeled exactly what I've seen from Colton Parayko in 2 games. And we talked about this the day he said it, T-Bone, when BK was out. He basically is stating that, the alpha dog might not be what Colton Parayko is, but he's still going to be one of the top shutdown defensemen for us and around the league. He's played like that in 2 games. I mean, aside from Jordan Binnington, who has been the best player on the ice in the first 2 games for the Blues, Colton Parayko has been the second best right up there with him. He's broken up plays. He's used his side. He's quick out of his zone. He's shown his speed. He's one of the fastest skaters on the ice when the puck's on his stick. And what I have seen from Colton Parayko is what I thought Colton Parayko was going to be throughout his entire career. And I think we got to this point when Petro left and he was labeled as an alpha dog that, all of a sudden he's going to be a guy with a booming slap shot that scores 15 goals. He's never going to be that. He's maybe going to give you 5. But you know what he's going to do? He's going to play 25 minutes a night. He's going to be a part of a penalty kill that is successful, and he's going to stop the other team's lines from creating high-danger chances. And he has done that. And credit to Nick Leddy. Leddy did that in that Dallas Stars game. I didn't think it was the best game against Seattle, but regardless, that top pair is playing top minutes, and they're eliminating the other team's top lines. And that's the important factor into all of this.
Yeah, we just mentioned, offensively feels like they're just thinking too much. It's clear Parayko is not thinking too much, and that was something that Craig Berube said last year during his struggles. And Parayko played like this after the trade deadline. And it's a good sign to see that he's playing like this again early on in the 2-game sample size that we've seen. Because I think you're right. I think he's been the second best player on the team outside of Jordan Binnington. And honestly, that's what you need. Your goalie to be your best player on the ice all the time. So I think he's been really impressive to the point of Nick Leddy. Maybe it's because I'm noticing Colton Parayko more using his skating ability to get out of the zone. I haven't noticed Nick Leddy, which feels like a good thing. And that top pairing actually feels like a defensive, not a defensive liability as a top pairing. It feels like a defensive shutdown pairing.
And you know who you used to not remember being on the ice? Bouwmeester. Like when Bouwmeester was at his best, you forgot he was out there, other than some big-time plays that he exits out of the zone with. And that's what Parayko and Leddy have done.
He's also just eating a ton of minutes.
Yeah.
Like what he's doing for you right now is maybe he's kind of Miles Michaelis for you. Like he's playing the role of that top starter for a team by just taking the ball every 5th day and giving you a ton of innings. Is the quality always like legit number 1 defenseman level? No, probably not. But it's been really good so far this year. And if he continues performing like this, man, we're going to look back at that contract. We're going to look back at who he is as a player and say, all right, listen, did he become what we wanted him to be? No. Was he a really good, capable defenseman that ended up helping the Blues? Absolutely. And that's what they need him to continue to be moving forward. Coming up in about 15 minutes, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll get to questions and answers. But next, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters, including what we learned last night in the Cowboys versus the Chargers game. The only thing I felt like I learned is that neither of these teams are legitimate contenders in their respective conferences. We'll explain why coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. The next couple of days, it is going to be perfect fall weather out there. 68, 70 degrees, sun is out. What better way to make those fall outings, those family traditions, than to go get those famous frozen custards off of Chippewa? It's been a St. Louis tradition since 1929, and they've got everything you can ask for. It's the famous frozen custard made from quality ingredients. And if you don't like custards, you could go concrete, you can go sundaes, malt shakes, floats, ice cream sodas, whatever you prefer, Ted Drew's has it for you. Plenty of nice favors already in place. You got the seasonal option. BK's a big pumpkin spice latte guy. Go get a slice of pumpkin pie mixed in a vanilla frozen custard topped with whipped cream or anything else that you want. They've got it over at Ted Drew's. And while you're out there, walk across the street off of Chippewa. Go check out their gift shop. They've got unique apparel for kids and adults. They've got hats, drinkwares, more, gift cards, which is a perfect gift for that special someone. Go check them out. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard off of Chippewa. It really is good, guys and gals.
Tanner Hendricks here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Rangers beat the Astros yesterday 5-4 as they take a 2-0 series lead in the ALCS, and the Phillies won Game 1 against Arizona 5-3. They lead that series 1-0, and Game 2 can be heard here tonight on 101 ESPN as Phillies Diamondbacks will have pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We'll get to questions and answers in about 10 minutes or so. A little bit of an update on a big recruiting story for the Missouri Tigers. According to PowerMizzou.com, SLU wide receiver Ryan Wingo is expected to come to a decision, quote-unquote, soon. According to his family, he's going to be in Columbia for Mizzou versus South Carolina this weekend. The expectation from seemingly everybody that covers recruiting is that Ryan Wingo, the 5-star wide receiver out of SLU, is probably going to be attending the University of Missouri next year.
That kid can play. I've seen him in person.
Very good.
That dude just stud.
Can't wait to watch him and Luther Burden on the same field.
There's still one more St. Louis wide receiver that Missouri is hoping to be able to acquire this offseason. It is Jeremiah McClellan.
Drink ever going to recruit a defense?
Big
Starting to sound like Lincoln Riley.
player out of CBC. Everything that I've seen is that he is close with Ryan Wingo. The two have discussed what it would be like to play together in college. He's currently committed to Ohio State. He was at Mizzou this past weekend.
I'd say there should be a...
Who's this again?
Huh?
What's this kid's name?
Jeremiah McClellan.
Hey, Jeremiah McClellan. You listening, man? I'd go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
They should probably do a Mizzou and Illinois football bragging rights game, although Illinois really would never have bragging rights.
Mizzou's going to have like more 4 stars at wide receiver than they had in the entire roster 5 years ago.
Is Drake recruiting a defense at all? What's going on here?
Don't lean into it, man.
He's learning from Lincoln Riley? How's that going for him?
Lean into it.
So let's get to the NFL quick hitters. Guys, there was an NFL game that was played last night.
Was there?
It was a snooze fest.
Yeah, it was.
Cowboys versus the Chargers. 2 really fun teams coming into the year that have, really been underwhelming relative to expectations. Alex, what did you learn from this game, if anything?
That neither are playoff contending teams. Well, neither are Super Bowl contending teams. The Chargers, I mean, probably should fire Brandon Staley as soon as possible. They look lost out there, man.
Dude, he's got to shape that beard.
Yeah,
that thing looks terrible.
And then on the Cowboy side of it, the defense continues to play well, but it's not what it was when they had Trayvon Diggs. Of course, that's like elite. And Dak Prescott, cool, his comeback game, right? 272 yards thrown. The only touchdown he got was what? A one that he ran himself? I just don't think he is a quarterback that leads you to the promised land. And I'm seeing it more and more week by week for that Cowboys team.
I think what I learned is I agree with you. I don't think either one of them is a Super Bowl contender. And I think also just reaffirming my stance, both are going to have new coaches next year.
Yeah.
If these teams aren't competitive in their conference, which they don't look like it right now, I don't expect to see Mike McCarthy coaching the Cowboys. I don't expect to see Brandon Staley coaching the Chargers next year. Those 2 teams are probably going to be fighting for Bill Belichick once he gets fired from New England.
Don't do that, by the way. Don't do that.
Have 'em.
You've got bigger issues. Your defense is not your problem for either of these 2 teams. Go get a quarterback coach.
Yeah.
Go get Ben Johnson from the Detroit Lions.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
He can come in and hopefully fix your offense. Now, maybe it fails spectacularly. I don't care at this point. You got to try. Because what you're doing right now is clearly not working. My biggest issue, to your point, T-Bone, because I've got the exact same takeaway, is that the coaches are the problem. Man, the offense is the problem for Dallas. Well, who coaches the offense? It's your head coach. Defensively for the Chargers, it feels like every game they've got 3 plays where something goes horribly awry. And that is where Brandon Staley is supposed to make his hay. Now, I fully anticipate the Chargers defense to look good next week against the Chiefs. It always does. He pulls out his best defensive game plans every single season when they go up against the Chiefs. So next week, I expect the Chiefs to score 20 or fewer points against them. It's kind of how it typically goes. 20 to 24 points is where you typically end up against them. But the offense, it's weird, dude. They have so much talent, and I think Justin Herbert's really good. But the evidence is mounting that Justin Herbert might not be the guy the way that we all thought he was going to be. He might be kind of Josh Allen-y, where he's a really good player, and there are moments or individual games even where he looks like the best quarterback in the world. but it is so inconsistent. And in the biggest moments, he has these brain farts where you just can't build a championship contender around it. And maybe one year it all comes together. But right now, it doesn't appear that that's going to be the case for the Chargers. When these two coaches are fired, last night was a prime indication as to why for both of these teams. All right, next up. Guys, what happened to all the good quarterbacks around the league? Speaking of last night's game, Dak and Herbert, not particularly impressive in that one. This was a theme of the week. Quarterback play around the league was abysmal. Teams averaged 18 points per game this week, Alex. The lowest in the NFL in any individual week since week 15 of 2014. The lowest scoring week in almost a decade. Do you think this is going to be considered something that is a trend moving forward, or was this a one-off, or just a weird week with some good offenses going up against excellent defenses?
I want to say it's a one-off because, like, you look at some of the quarterbacks, and I mean, like Joe Burrow, we're still kind of figuring out what the hell's going on here. Pat Mahomes having the issues with Denver. Some of this is just roster construction, to where it feels like some of the rosters just aren't built that way. But I mean, we've talked about how, like, defenses seem to just play in this heavy set now. What was it, cover two we've talked about, where you just don't allow those deep passes and you just go shorter plays, you go forwards, or you go running backs that get involved. I also feel like there's just an emphasis on defense right now around the NFL. Like, watching Cleveland, watching Detroit, watching Dallas, like, it seems to be teams view it as we're winning with defense rather than the elite offense that we typically do.
I think this is a trend. I don't think this is a one-off, because think of all the, like, elite quarterbacks that we thought coming into the year. Josh Allen, continue to have Josh Allen-type games. Jalen Hurts, he's been good, but the Eagles' offense doesn't look right.
Significantly worse than last year. He has the same number of interceptions as touchdowns.
Yeah, and even like now, Patrick Mahomes, I think, is a different conversation. I think that's just the weapons around him.
That's roster construction.
I don't think there's much concern. But he has
also
played
had some really bad moments this year.
He has had like the one interception, like he threw like right to the guy.
He's had 3 of them so far. It's
Taylor
very
Swift.
un-Mahomes-like.
All these quarterbacks that we talked about in the elite category, it'd be one thing if we saw like the mid-level guys like Kirk Cousins and them struggling and going, oh, well, that's a bit odd. Maybe the defense has figured it out. But the fact that I can like point to some of the elite guys coming into the year that are struggling, I think it's a trend. I think defenses have figured something out, and I think these NFL teams are going to have to get back to that running format, to just use the run to establish the passing game.
I'm the last guy that would say that. You're right. Like, when the Chiefs' offense is going well this year, it's because they get Isaiah Pacheco involved. When the 49ers offense is going at its best, it's because Christian McCaffrey is the thing that gets them started, and then Brock Purdy is able to be a secondary piece to that. One of the things that has made the Miami Dolphins offense so difficult to be able to defend this year is the running game. Like, for all of the talk about Waddle and Tyreek, it's mostly been Tyreek in the passing game this year, not Waddle. And the running game is really what's created a lot of their explosive plays. I think that a lot of teams are trying to figure out how to attack the defenses that they're seeing right now. The only quarterback in the league averaging more than 280 yards per game currently is Tua Tagovailoa. He's the only one. 2021, there were 8 quarterbacks that had at least 280 yards per game. It is a clear and definable difference that is taking place in the league right now. And I do think it's becoming a trend. I don't think it sustains the way that it did this week.
I'd agree with that.
But I do think that you are going to see this year in general, offense take a bit of a step back compared to what we've become accustomed to.
And think when you think Tua, you know, usually when I would think like, oh, a guy that threw for 280 yards, think like Russ in Seattle. What was it? Russ is just killing a team with the deep ball. How's Tua killing teams? Yeah, they're hitting deep balls. But he's also they're running like little crossing routes to Tyreek. And you just get the ball in his hands and he's in space and he just flies up the field because you get the 2 safeties high.
Yeah,
dump it off to Tyreek, and there's a cheetah running down the sideline and you can't catch him.
The truth is, the Dolphins have a cheat code.
Yeah.
They have the fastest man, and I think the best non-quarterback, most important non-quarterback in the NFL. And Tyreek Hill has 815 yards receiving through 6 games. Like, if you've got that guy, the rest of the rules of the league do not apply to you. All right, last thing here, guys. Who's the coach that you think has done the most this year to get his team to perform above expectations? Is there anybody immediately that comes to mind for you? Like, I always think in previous iterations of their team, Mike Vrabel is this guy for me, where I just assume his team's going to do well because he's the head coach. Who's the coach that has stood out to you in terms of his job this year?
I mean, mine's Dan Campbell. And I know that there are expectations for Detroit, but man, 5-1 and being one of the best teams in that conference right now, Well, listening to his post-game speeches every game, it feels like, man, that has an entire city bought into his words. And Dan Campbell has found the best not just out of Jared Goff, but he's found the best out of David Montgomery, who felt like he wasn't that guy anymore in Chicago. He's gotten the best out of a rookie in Sam Laporta, and that defense is tough. So I'm going to say Campbell.
He's the current favorite in Vegas at plus 250. It's
as he should be.
Campbell 1, Mike McDaniel 2 at 3-1, and then everybody else is kind of a distant third or beyond, with D'Amico Ryans coming in at third at 8.5 to 1.
I've got two that kind of stand out to me. One, I'll start with the AFC South, D'Amico Ryans. I think that dude's a hell of a coach, man. And that Texans team, they've got some pieces. They're clearly a year or two away from being a true contender, but they've got C.J. Stroud playing well. Their defense looks pretty good, and they're 3-3. Like, they're still in the thick of things in the AFC South and in the playoff picture too. And then the other one for me, and I say this because, like, he had expectations coming in the year, but everything changed. Robert Saleh's doing a hell of a job, man. They're 3-3 with Zach freaking Wilson at quarterback and a good defense, and they just won their last game without their two top corners against the freaking Eagles. Like, whoa. Robert Saleh, I always thought he was a great coach when he was with the 49ers. I thought he'd have success in New York. Got dealt a bad hand with Zach Wilson when they drafted him. Then he got Aaron Rodgers, but somehow he's still keeping the team afloat. Let's be honest, they should be a 1-5 football team.
He's the defensive version to me of what we saw early on from Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan, you remember, his first couple of years in San Francisco was like, man, this offense is doing so much with so little. They had like Nick Mullins starting for them at quarterback. And then finally they were able to get Jimmy G, and then Jimmy G got hurt again. Like, they just were dealt such terrible hands, and Shanahan ended up making those teams competitive, but they just couldn't get over the hump because of what they had at quarterback. Same thing is true right now in New York with Saleh. He's making those defenses into like top 5 units perennially. They just have to find a quarterback. They have one. He got hurt. So we'll see what ends up coming from that. I like that nominee. I would go with Sean McVay. I think he's done an outstanding job this year with the Rams. That team is not particularly talented, man. Their defense isn't all that talented. Their offense, outside of like 2 guys, isn't all that talented. Like, I really like Puka Nacua, but come on. Did any of us think that Puka Nacua was going to be this coming into the season? He's putting him in positions to succeed. Cooper Kupp is great, but they really have one weapon offensively. They've been using Kyron Williams, who was an afterthought as a running back, and he's going out there giving them massive games on the ground. Their offensive line is bad. Like, they should not be very good. And they're going out there, and every week they're competitive. They lost by 3 against Cincinnati. They lost by 1 touchdown against San Francisco. They lost by 9 against Philly. They're 3-3, man. They're right in the thick of things. And their next few games, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Green Bay, if they go 2-1 in that stretch, they're going to be in the playoff hunt going into their bye week. I didn't see that coming. I thought this was one of the worst rosters assembled in the NFL, and now they're potentially going to be a playoff team. I've been so impressed by Sean McVay.
And as much as I've liked what Sean McVay has done, I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I think the 2 most impressive coaching jobs we've seen this year are from defensive coordinators. Jim Schwartz in Cleveland, that dude's smirking on the sideline, stopping the second best offense in the league in the San Francisco 49ers. And I think Raheem Morris has done an incredible job with this defense. Guys, we came in the year, not only was the offensive line a massive question mark for the Rams, they were starting like a whole bunch of kids on defense. I thought they were going to be lost defensively. They're going to have to win games like 48-45, like we were watching basically watching USC defense out there. And they've been competitive. I think the best coaching we've seen this year, not taking away anything from like the guys that we just nominated as the head coaches. Those 2 defensive coordinators have been incredible and should get coaching jobs next year.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we get to questions and answers. I've got a question for Alex, because according to a tweet from Jeremy Rutherford, we might have just had our moment that puts the Blues back on track. We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. How about this tweet from Jeremy Rutherford, our guy who's going to join us coming up at 1 o'clock? Shin and Kyrou just got into it during a drill. Quote, it didn't last long and it probably wasn't a fight, but it was definitely a scrum between the two. Stanley Cup coming?
Yep.
It's the only reaction,
Now
right?
all we need is to find a good song.
Ooh, we should get on that. We did find good vibrations for them 2 years ago.
It's true. If that team would have won the cup, we would have had a little single chapter in that story.
Our picture would have been on the ring.
Yeah. Well, probably not. BK's got a big head.
Yeah. Well,
Small. I love this. I don't know if it's going to lead to anything. I love this. Because if Braden Shin is holding the rest of the team accountable, this is something that the team needed, man. They needed a guy that was willing to not just like lead by example, but to say, hey, get your stuff together, man. Stop straight-legging it. And listen, Kyrou just had probably his best game defensively that I've seen from him in almost a calendar year. So it's not as if Kyrou has been terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I want to make that clear up front. But if he saw something where he has, in his mind, Kyrou needed to be straightened out, good for him. You've got to have this stuff handled inside of the dressing room and not just coming down from the coaches.
And that's not even saying that it was on the defensive side. I'll be curious in JR because this might have been on the offensive side in terms of puck retrieval, of going after the puck and staying hard on the puck rather than letting it go. I just told you in the commercial break, this is why you named Braden Shen the captain. Because all respect to Ryan O'Reilly, an incredible leader, but Ryan O'Reilly's not going to do this in practice. Ryan O'Reilly's going to pull him to the side afterwards and he's going to talk with him. This is David Backes. And David Backes, I'll never forget it, got into a scrum during practice with Vladimir Tarasenko, and it was the middle of a battle drill where he dropped his gloves and threw a couple of punches at him. And after that, it's like something shifted in that team. Who knows? I'm not going to make a mountain out of a molehill in something like this, but look, Braden Shen, your captain, is making sure everybody is on the same page. I played a piece in intermission Saturday night of Kevin Hayes, who was on a Missing Curfew with Scotty Upshaw and Shane O'Brien, and they asked him about Craig Berube. And Kevin Hayes said, if you don't play the way Craig Berube wants you to play, you're not going to be playing. And I really wonder, wasn't it Army that said that going into the season? Or Jamie, you said it about him. I don't think Craig Berube's going to take the same stuff that he took last year. Yep. And Shen's taking the coach's voice and making it heard to the team.
I 100% agree with you. And I think this is a good thing to have it happen at practice. And like you said, making it known that this will not stand in this year with this year's team. Last year, I agree. I don't think Ryan O'Reilly would do something like this. And that's not a shot against Ryan O'Reilly. But if the Blues want to get back to the playoffs, they're going to have to be a team that there is no kind of wiggle room for them. They are a borderline playoff team. So everybody's got to be on the same page, and we don't know what it was that they were doing, but I'm glad to see that Shen kind of, I don't want to say went after Kyrou, make it sound like, oh, good for that, but it's the message sending. That's what you want from your captain.
Everybody captains and leads differently.
Absolutely.
O'Reilly led a different way, that a group that worked, and now it seems the talking with Kyrou isn't working. And again, I think Kyrou played great in the last two games, which is just crazy that we're talking about this. But maybe this is kind of the push that you need, because Braden Shen is a guy that is well respected in that locker room.
All right, let's get to some more questions. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, if you had to bet on somebody to win the Heisman Trophy today, who would you bet on? In Vegas, the overwhelming favorite today is Michael Penix Jr. You would have to bet $140 on him to win 100. He is very clearly the number one guy for this award. Alex, if we were to say somebody not named Michael Penix Jr., who would you go with as your favorite to win the Heisman?
I think it would be Caleb Williams, and I just came off probably one of the worst weeks that you can ask for, but he's still a guy that has the name recognition. He's going to be a guy that's going to be talked about as the number one overall pick, and his touchdown numbers are still going to be ultimately high. Even if the defense stinks behind him, even if he has his interceptions, he's still a guy that's going to be throwing, what do you think, 40-plus touchdowns this season? So I would say if it's not Penix, because I believe Vegas, he's the overwhelmingly favorite, I'd go with Williams.
I think I would probably lean towards J.J. McCarthy, because he's going to have two really massive games coming up. They've got Penn State in a couple weeks, and they're going to play Ohio State. And if you win both of those, you're in the Big Ten championship game. So, and his numbers right now, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,500 passing yards.
He's having a really good year.
He plays well in those big marquee games. He'll start to earn some conversation, but it almost does feel like Michael Penix has just kind of swept the Heisman Trophy under the rug, because it feels like he's going to win it unless he gets hurt.
Jaden Daniels, That would probably be my
Yeah, that's
nominee.
another really good one.
22 touchdowns through the air so far this year. Added another 4 on the ground. Has 500 yards rushing and 2,300 yards passing. He's been unbelievable. And if LSU, kind of similar to your point, T-Bone, you got to win. That's a big part of this. If LSU is able to continue running the table with their schedule this year, going to go 10-2, have a chance to be able to get to the SEC championship game this year. You need a little help, but you could potentially get there.
They still have Alabama on the schedule, right?
They do. They've got Alabama, and that's really their toughest game. Their remaining schedule: Army, Florida, Georgia State, Texas A&M, and Alabama. If they're able to win that game against Alabama, they'll finish with 1 loss in the SEC, have a very real chance of being able to go to the SEC championship game coming out of the west side of the bracket. So I would say he's another one that I would throw to, but I agree with you guys. Michael Penix Jr. is obviously the favorite right now to be able to win that one. Coming up next, let's talk a little bit more about the Blues. The line combinations have been put together today at Morning Skate. There's one piece of this puzzle that, Alex, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not saying they're wrong for doing it, but it does leave a little something to be desired for me. I'll ask you what your thoughts are on this coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK, and I've got some exciting news for all the men out there. Victory Men's Health has launched a new telehealth site. This is called Victory RX, and men, you can go there at victoryrx.com. You'll be able to get prescribed that ED medication that you were looking for. They've made this process so incredibly easy. You go to the site, you do your entire consult all via text. This is going to be a trusted brand for you. They've treated thousands of men in their standalone locations, and now, regardless of where you're listening from right now, you've got easier access to that #1 selling ED medication. There's going to be a chewable tablet. You don't have to swallow it like you did with the other pills previously. When you swallow that pill, it was potentially affected by the food or the drink that you had earlier in the day. That's the swallowing the pill. This is a chewable tablet, completely different. It's not going to be affected by any of the food or the drink. It's got active ingredients with both Viagra and Cialis. Going to be the correct dosage for you. So be sure to go there today. VictoryRx.com. That's VictoryRx.com. Play hard. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so the Blues are out at morning skate right now, and Jeremy Rutherford has reported what the lines look like today without Pavel Buchnevich in the lineup. Alex, most of it is kind of what we anticipated. Saad moved up as he did in the last game with Thomas and Kyrou to replace Buchnevich. Now that means that there's a spot where Saad was in the lineup as well. I'm going to be honest with you. I was hoping that that spot would be taken by Jake Neighbors, because the hope is he can be a top 9 forward for you at some point. Instead, at least today at skate, they had Toropchenko skating with Shin and Kapanen, and then Verana, Hayes, and Blais were in their typical spot with the third line, and Alexandrov took the spot of Toropchenko on the fourth line as a winger with Sonny and Neighbors. Alex, what do you think about Toropchenko getting that second line opportunity?
I think this is Craig Berube rewarding Toropchenko because he played an incredible game against the Seattle Kraken. And I mean, as soon as Buchnevich went down, Toropchenko was the one that got shifted up to that Shen line when Saad moved up with Thomas and Kyrou. So, I mean, look, I love the way that Toropchenko plays, and you just, in the mindset of Craig Berube, you think of how they like to formulate the lines. You've got the centerman, you've got the offensive player, the shooter, however you want to view it, and you've got the guy who retrieves the pucks. And in this scenario, you got the size in retrieving the pucks with Toropchenko. I hate it for the fact of this should be Jake Neighbors' spot. Toropchenko got it because Toropchenko, frankly, had a better game than Jake Neighbors in Seattle. But I don't like the fact that Jake Neighbors isn't playing here, because Jake Neighbors, to me, was supposed to be the Swiss Army knife. We saw this in preseason where when Kyrou got injured, he was playing with Thomas and Buchnevich. When Kapanen was injured, he played with Shen and Saad. And then he was playing, of course, on the fourth line. So it told me that, like, Jake Neighbors is going to be the guy that they're hoping that they can get more of. And he's not getting this opportunity. Now, who's to say that by Thursday in the middle of the game, Toropchenko doesn't look great, Neighbors is back up there? It happens. That's how Craig Berube works. But apparently they're saying they need a little bit more from Jake Neighbors to get this opportunity because Toropchenko outperformed him, at least in that game against the Kraken.
I don't have a problem with them putting Toropchenko up there. I don't think it's necessarily a bad decision because, as you said, Toropchenko's probably been the better of the two players so far this year. I don't love the fact that Toropchenko has been the better of the two players so far this year.
That's a really good way of framing it.
And when you look at what Jake Neighbors is right now at this point in his career compared to what you were hoping that he would be at this point, I think it's fair to say this is underwhelming relative to expectations, because the hope was, as a former first-round pick, and he's still really young, man. It's so hard to put too much on these young guys when they immediately get to the NHL. But, man, I thought he was going to have that spot that Sammy Blais in right now. I thought going into opening night, that was probably his spot to lose. And instead, Sammy Blais earned that opportunity, and has kept Jake Neighbors on the fourth line. And now you see another spot open up, and it's Toropchenko taking that role over Jake Neighbors. I think what we're seeing with the Blues this year, and you referenced this in our last segment, Craig Berube is not doing the thing anymore where he's saying, we're going to develop these guys on the fly. We're going to take this year to be able to find out what these guys can be in the future. No, he's trying to win now. He wants to put out the best lineup possible for Thursday night in that game against Arizona. What is my best opportunity to win? And in his mind, the best opportunity to be able to win that game is with Toropchenko as a top 9 forward. And that, to me, it's disheartening about what the future can be for Jake Neighbors, or at least what the immediate future is for him. I think that he's probably going to be mostly a fourth line guy this year. It's not inherently a bad thing, but given what I thought he could be, it is a little underwhelming.
Yeah, he's going to get the opportunities, and I always go back to what Doug talked about last year also, where he's like, look, we're not going to throw these guys into the ocean and let them drown. If they're not working, they're going to move them back to smaller water and let them try and swim. And Neighbors is 21 years old. And through preseason, it wasn't anything overwhelming that you watch and you say, oh, wow, he deserves that opportunity. And so far through 2 games, like, he's been fine on that fourth line. The fourth line has been good enough to go out there in any scenario, but it hasn't been the driver of offense that you expected it to be.
They've driven zero offense.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I think they've put together like a total of 2 shots on goal and maybe 2 shots. Like, Sonny has been the one that's had the most high danger scoring chances. So to me, that's like, okay, well, you still got stuff to work on. And it makes sense. You're 21 years old, and to get that work, you go on the fourth line. That's some ideal matchups, especially on home ice, that Craig Berube can put a fourth line out there against a defensively deficient line. So it's an opportunity for Jake Neighbors to impress. Toropchenko's 24 years old. Toropchenko understands what his role is on this team. Hit everything, skate fast, and use your size to your advantage. So you put him on a line to try and create a little bit more offense and, frankly, some defensive responsibility here. So I'm not sitting here hitting the red alarm bells that Jake Neighbors isn't getting this opportunity, because it's going to happen. But what I am saying is we do need to kind of have a slap back to reality moment where, like, look, they drafted Jake Neighbors as somebody who could be a role player. They didn't draft Jake Neighbors to be a game changer.
It kind of is the conversation to me of the Alec Burleson stuff from this year, where people see, hey, top 100 prospect, and they assume that he's going to be one thing, and then you see him and you're like, wait, this is something completely different. And I think that's kind of where we're at with Jake Neighbors, right? Where it's, hey, former first-round pick, potential to be a top 6-ish kind of a winger, plays in all of these different roles, not really great at anything, but kind of pretty good at just about everything. And so we kind of assumed he was going to be this, and now he's actually that. And with Burleson, what that means is he's probably a fourth outfielder DH type. With Jake Neighbors, he's probably a fringe third-line winger in the future who has most of his opportunities coming on the fourth line. How do you value that? I don't know. I would say as a guy that's on an entry-level deal, there's nothing wrong with that. Later on in his career, what does that mean for him? I really don't know. Honestly, we got a couple of texts that made me laugh from the 618. BK is basically saying without actually saying, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And then somebody else on our text line said, this is more of a, that's interesting, not an, why not this other guy kind of a situation for me. I agree with both of those. Yeah. I'm not mad about any of this. Like, it's hard for me to make the case for Jake Neighbors to be the player that is deserving of this opportunity. Toropchenko has been better. But also, it's kind of upsetting to me that Jake Neighbors hasn't earned the opportunity to get this role. I would have liked to have seen him be in that spot.
Yeah, and I would have liked that opportunity because it would have said, hey, we're seeing growth with Jake Neighbors. And this isn't to say that they're not seeing growth with Jake Neighbors. Maybe what they're seeing is we want to keep him in this designated role so we do have 4 lines that we can run with, because you're putting an Alexandrov in here. The disappointment, if we're going to go down that dad route here, the disappointment is that Jake Neighbors hasn't shown that ability yet for us fans, and we're still waiting to see it, and that's what you want to see early on, especially when this team is offensively deficient.
Yeah, I just want to see him drive more offense, and that's the thing with Torpo is you don't really expect that out of him, and that's not a shot against Toropchenko. We know exactly who he is as a player. I think what you said there, Alex, was correct on him. He's going to get the puck on his stick, he's going to drive to the net, and he's going to shoot it.
Does the same thing every single night.
We know exactly how he's going to do it, where he's going to go, and it's a lot of times not particularly effective, but he's driving offense. He's going north and south, and that's what Craig Berube wants, is predictable players that are going to do the things that he is expecting. And if you do that on this line with Shin and Kapanen, you put the puck on net, maybe there's a rebound that comes available and Shin's right there to clean things up for you. Like, I get the appeal of having him on that line. The problem is I can't speak to any one individual thing that Neighbors does at the same level that Torpo does, that exact move that I just referenced. And at this point in his career, if you don't have that to be able to point to, I can't make the case for you to get that opportunity over Alexey Toropchenko. Yeah. And that is a little disappointing. And it's why when we talked about this yesterday, I wondered, like, hey, if they had the cap space available right now, which they don't, it almost would have been worth it to be able to call up a guy like Bolduc or Dean to be able to have a little more offense in those top 3 lines.
Yeah, I really feel like they're still trying to let Jake Neighbors figure out who he is in the NHL. And that's maybe why they're not putting him up in that spot, because then you're trying to do more. Like, again, Toropchenko knows who he is. Jake Neighbors, I still feel like, wonders who he is in terms of, am I a top 6 guy who they want offense from? Am I a physical guy? Do I play as a power forward? Do you want speed? Like, he's still in this kind of purgatory where Toropchenko basically says, I'm 6'6", I'm going to outskate the other player because nobody expects that from me, and I'm going to go to the front of the net. I would assume that's more of the reason why he's getting this opportunity while they're still trying to let Neighbors figure out who he is.
Our text line is asking if it's fair to say that Jake Neighbors can be a future Brandon Saad. That was my hope. My hope was that Jake Neighbors, and I'm talking point production, not necessarily stylistically, could be something similar to Brandon Saad. At this point, I don't necessarily know that that's a fair comparison, because at this point in Brandon Saad's career, he was playing for a championship contending Chicago Blackhawks team.
He was
and was getting
20-plus
17 minutes per night, 20-plus goals,
Yeah.
40 to 50 points per year. And that was basically from the moment that he became an every night regular for them, he was that player. So I don't think that is a reasonable expectation at this point for Jake Neighbors. My hope now is like 10 goals, 30 points is what you're kind of shooting for.
It's weird because I just don't know like what the hope is for him, because to me, I felt like the hope was always Jaden Schwartz, where one season you were going to get 20, 25 goals, another season you were going to get 14, but you knew he was going to be on that line and you knew he was going to hold on to the puck. He's going to be a tough cookie to go up against. You haven't seen that yet. But again, he's 21 years old, and like Jaden Schwartz didn't score 25 goals until he was 24 years old in the NHL. So these things take time. Brandon Saad, Jaden Schwartz, like I think that's still what the Blues are hoping the ceiling is when he figures it out.
I think it's just less likely at this point that he reaches that ceiling.
Yeah, then right now we're looking at more of a third-line guy that you hope can chip in 15 goals in a season for you.
Yeah, at this point in Jaden Schwartz's career, he had 25 goals and 56 points.
Yeah.
In his third season in the NHL, he was 21 years old.
Yeah. In his second season in the NHL, he had 13 points in 45 games.
If he had 14
And that
goals,
was basically Neighbors' year last year.
Yeah.
if he had 14 goals, 12 assists this year, 80 games played, what would you say?
13 goals and what?
14 goals, 12 assists this year, and 80 games played, what would you say?
Fine.
That was
Yeah, I would
Ivan
say that's
Barbashev
good.
his third year.
Yeah. And again,
I think
probably your hope.
That's what I would. As you guys were
Barbashev was a
talking about
fourth-line
that,
player.
I was thinking kind of Barbie, and I looked like Barbie his second year at age 22, 53 games, 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points.
Yeah, there's your
Like
compliment.
that's who I think he's molding into, the young version of Ivan Barbashev that wasn't so much the goal scorer.
Yeah, I think that's your comparison probably. And I don't know that he has the same offensive upside as Barbashev, because in the minors, Barbashev was, you pointed this out a lot, Alex, when I was being
Trying to
overly
trade him.
critical of Ivan Barbashev. You talked about it a lot, how, hey, this is a guy that in his minor league career was a offensive force, and it just took a little while to develop that at the NHL level. Even in the minors, Jake Neighbors didn't have that kind of offensive production. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Better or Forget It here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. That was well done. He's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Let's play a game of Better to Forget It. Guys, better to forget it. Sonny Gray will be a Cardinal by the end of the month of November.
End of the month of November?
Mm-hmm. I'll say by the end of October. When do the playoffs end?
November 1st.
Oh. Unless they go quick, right?
Yeah, technically they could end before then.
Okay, well, I'll say it'll be before the beginning of November.
Damn.
That's what I just said.
Carry the one.
Let's say before the second week of November. What I'm saying is when free agency open, he's going to be on this team.
I'm going to forget it. I think he's going to sign with the Cardinals, but I think it won't be till like the winter meetings, which is in December.
Why? He wants to be wanted. The Cardinals are saying they want him. It's a match made in heaven.
It is a match made in heaven, but the MLB offseason.
The Cardinals have a boombox on their shoulder, standing outside of Sonny Gray's window, singing "Sweet Nothing."
The Cardinals are Jason Derulo right now. Like, we want you to want me,
Jason Derulo.
Jason Derulo. He does not understand that.
No, I knew that one. I knew that one.
He's in some hot water, by the way.
Is he really?
It's not
poor
good.
guy.
Alex, what do you have for us today for Better to Forget?
All right, guys, Better to Forget It. Doug Armstrong's going to pull off a trade with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Anybody see this yesterday?
Let's go.
He's attending the Maple Leafs Blackhawks game. What? And let's just be honest. What do the Toronto Maple Leafs have? A star forward that they don't have signed. What do they want? Defenseman. Bada boom, bada bing. Let's make a deal. Monty Hall, let's make a deal.
You go first. You're the negative one.
Yeah, I said no, but like I'm forgetting it.
Why is he in attendance then? Why wouldn't he be in St. Louis?
He is the general manager of Hockey Canada.
There's other people that could do that for him.
He's probably
you don't
up there
send in the
scouting.
big dogs unless you're ready to pull off a deal.
He's probably up there scouting, trying to find out, hey, Austin Matthews is going to be available via trade.
Hey,
Mitch Marner.
going to be coming down to the wire.
No, I don't think this is going to happen. I believe that. I think if there's going to be a move to acquire a guy like Marner or Nylander, whoever, it's coming after the season.
See,
I do not think that they're going to acquire. I don't think Toronto has any incentive to move those players in season.
I think the Toronto Maple Leafs know that they need help defensively. Like they got beat 4-1 by the Blackhawks yesterday on home ice. Yeah, so I've been told. I think they know they need a defenseman, and I think Nylander is the ultimate chip to dangle. Now, Blues ain't trading Colton Parayko for William Nylander, so you can just stop with that. Somebody's going to make a trade with them. I just don't know who.
I forget it too, just because I don't see the Blues making. I agree with BK. If you're viewing this as a transition year, you don't get to the trade deadline and go, forget transition. Let's put all our poker chips into the middle and let's go acquire Nylander when we can go get him in the offseason for money. So I can't see them giving up draft capital, prospect capital, any sort of capital to make a massive trade at this year's deadline.
Unless, of course, the Blues are awesome. In which case, hey, man, go all in. I got no problems with that. Flags fly forever. Raise the banners. I'm here for it.
Just don't trade Parayko.
Whatever you need to do to win a title, go win the title.
Trade Parayko.
I agree.
Okay.
What if we can get a title out of it?
Don't trade Parayko.
See, like
T-Bone, what do you got for us?
Bet it or forget it. The Blues will have a goalie or defenseman make the All-Star team.
Forget it.
Wow.
It's really hard to make the All-Star team in the NHL, man. Like, legitimately really hard because of the format and the way that they go about this thing. Like, yeah, I'm forgetting it.
I'm betting it. 2 goaltenders get selected from each division.
Oh, I thought you were about to say 2 goalies from the Blues.
No, God,
whoa.
2 goaltenders get selected from each division. It'll be Binnington and somebody else. Especially if this is a defensive team. If this is a defensive team, you're not getting a defenseman because the defensemen are going to be Cale Makar, Roman Josi, and then throw in one other guy from any of those other teams. Forward-wise, you have the better shot, but if you're a defensive team, you might not be scoring a lot of goals. Binnington would be the guy.
I mean, Saros is probably going to be one of the...
So you got to outperform Hellebuck and Ottinger.
Yeah, good luck. This is not me talking crap on Binnington. I want to make this clear. That guy has been amazing. I always get put into these situations where I'm like, not a top 5 goalie. He sucks. No, Binnington's been really good.
Unless Jason Robertson's putting up points or somebody else from Dallas is, then those guys go. And Miro Heiskanen's going to be another guy like that. This is where Binnington can shine, and you all will eat your damn words.
I hope nothing more than to be wrong here. I hope they get a goalie and a defenseman. Multiple defensemen.
Whoa.
That'd be great. Just think it's highly unlikely.
I think what you said's unlikely.
I would forget it too. But
what the hell, man?
I just threw it out there because they're playing better defensively. And Benner's got a great save percentage for the time being.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Guys, bet it or forget it. Neither the Eagles nor the Cowboys end up in the NFC Championship game this year.
So there would be 49ers and Lions, kind of what we're picturing.
Be the Buccaneers if you want it to be. Whoever you want to put in there.
Whoa.
The Rams.
Yeah, I'm gonna bet this one. I think the 49ers are the clear-cut one team in the NFC Championship, and frankly, I don't know how the matchups are going to go. Like, maybe Detroit doesn't get the ideal play, but if my money was down right now, it would be Detroit for San Francisco, NFC Championship.
See, I'm going to forget this. I still think Philadelphia will get there. I know they haven't been that impressive, but even when they're not impressive, they're still winning football games. So I think at some point it's going to click together, and they're going to get back to the NFC Championship game. I don't think Dallas will be there, but I can see Philly being there.
I'm right there with you. Philly has been disappointing relative to expectations, but it's still a really good football team. I view them kind of the way that I view Kansas City. Wake me up when it's like December 1st. And if they're still having the same struggles that they are currently, then we can talk. And then we can have a real conversation about whether or not they're a legit championship contender. But we used to do this every year with the New England Patriots, where we'd see them early on in the season. They'd have like 3 or 4 things that needed to get corrected. We'd freak out about them. They'd lose a game on national television and be like, this is the end of the Patriot. And then they were fine. We got to Thanksgiving and everything was corrected, and then they go to the playoffs and they're the team to beat once again. I think the same thing is probably going to be true in the AFC with the Chiefs and in the NFC with the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Guys, bet it or forget it. Mizzou wins at least 9 football games this year.
Bet it. I think easy they get to 9. That's the 3 non-ranked SEC teams that they play the rest of the way. The real question is, what do you do with Tennessee and with Georgia? And I think you win at least one of those.
I've got 9 as well. I'm going to bet this.
Tanner says 7.
No. Look, as much as I can not be a Mizzou fan, I can also be a realist. So I would bet this too. I mean, they should beat South Carolina this weekend. Florida and Arkansas, like those should be wins. I agree with Alex. I think they can beat Tennessee. I'm not sold on Tennessee. I thought they were going to lose this weekend against A&M, so I could see where Missouri could beat them. I'm not sold on the Georgia win as much as you guys are, but I would hear the argument against Tennessee.
If you were a realist, you would have picked Bennington as an all-star.
Yeah, for sure. Bet it or forget it, the SEC is held out of the college football playoff this year. Get 0 representatives in the college football playoff this year.
I'm going to say forget this. That's dollar signs for them. They're going to find a way to get the SEC team in. I just don't know who. It's probably going to be Georgia, which sucks.
This depends on your faith in Georgia. Because if you think Georgia is legit and they're going to win out and they're going to beat Mizzou, they're going to beat Ole Miss, they're going to beat Tennessee, and then they'll beat whoever they face in the SEC championship game, yeah, they're in, obviously. If you think Georgia slips up at some point, man, it's hard to make the case for the SEC compared to some of these other conferences that you're going to see. Let's say Michigan wins out. They end up in the college football playoff because of that. Florida State wins out. They're going to be in the college football playoff. Say Washington wins out. They're in the college football playoff. Oklahoma wins out. They're in the college football playoff.
That's
Where's
a lot of
the
teams.
Spot?
That's a lot of teams.
Where's the spot for the SEC if you've got a bunch of teams that have 1 loss? There isn't one. Now, if one of those teams that I mentioned ends up losing, that's where it gets really interesting. I think the most entertaining scenario, Michigan wins out, Florida State wins out, Washington wins out until the Pac-12 championship game, and then loses head-to-head against Oregon. And you've got the potential of a 1-loss Oregon team and a 1-loss Washington team, and then let's say Oklahoma loses as well.
To Texas in the championship game.
What do you do here with 1-loss Pac-12 teams and 1-loss Oklahoma and a 1-loss SEC champion? That's where it gets really interesting. I would lean towards the Pac-12, man. It's a better conference this year. So I would put Washington and Oregon into the college football playoff. I don't know that they'll do it, but I'm going to bet it because I am pessimistic on Georgia. I don't think the SEC gets a representative this year.
See, I'm going to forget it because I'm not certain they slip up. The one game I have serious concern about before the championship game is Ole Miss, because Ole Miss, I could see, the problem is Ole Miss can't stop anybody. But I see Georgia getting in. I agree with you. I think 1 loss would kill them. But like if it comes down to 1 loss Georgia or a 1 loss Texas or a 1 loss like Florida State, I think the college football playoff committee is going to side with Georgia, and it's probably more recency bias than anything.
Well, and money
but I think
too.
they'll side. I think they'll side with them. I don't think Oklahoma is the last hope for the Big 12. Florida State's the last hope for the ACC. They get a loss either one of those teams, they're out. They're not going to make it because those conferences are weaker than the SEC, in my opinion.
North Carolina is undefeated, and if they end up continuing to be undefeated this year, they'll get in.
I know North Carolina. They're going to slip up at some point.
Totally agree, but just if we were going to make the argument for them, that would be the one other team. But that's it. Like, it's getting to be slim pickings at this point in the season. It feels so much like 2007, man. The biggest difference is we haven't seen the upsets at the top just yet, but those are coming. I mean, look at the schedule for this upcoming week in the college football slate. You got Penn State versus Ohio State. One of those teams is potentially going to be knocked out of the college football playoff contention there. Tennessee versus Alabama is a huge game within the SEC as well, depending on how you feel about Alabama long term. So there's some big time matchups potentially taking place still over the course of the next couple of weeks. I'm more pessimistic on the SEC's chances than most. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get to the junk drawer. Jeremy Rutherford joins us at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. But coming up next, there was some big news in Major League Baseball yesterday when it came to the general manager musical chairs. Alex, the reason why Kim Ng is no longer with the Marlins could be exactly what the Cardinals needed to hear. We'll explain it coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendricks, New Day Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Rangers beat the Astros 5-4 in the ALCS as they take a 2-0 series lead. And the Philadelphia Phillies took Game 1 over Arizona 5-3. And you can hear Game 2 of that NLCS series here tonight on 101 ESPN, as well as pregame coverage starting at 6:30. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff. Find your road shop 24/7 at londoff.com, londoffautoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
I understand not taking on an unnecessary risk, but at some point you do have to roll the dice again. You do have to get back out there. Okay, the Rays picked your pocket for Randy Arozarena. It happens.
Yeah.
But if you're waiting for every Arizona Diamondback and Colorado Rockies to fall asleep and get hammered and forget where they are, and then trade you Goldie or Arenado when they're desperate for just getting something, you're going to be waiting a while. What bad team right now has something you want? There's not another Arenado and Goldschmidt out there.
Alongside Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Anthony Stalter on the Fast Lane earlier this season, talking about how the Cardinals need to get aggressive this offseason with their trade plans. Alex, I think one team that we could point to that might have some stuff that you need, and you might have the stuff that they're looking to acquire on the cheap, is the Miami Marlins. So we've been talking about them for, 3 years now. They've got all the pitching that you could possibly ask for. Now, they do have one guy that's at the front end of their rotation that's probably not going to pitch next year, and that's Sandy Alcantara after getting Tommy John surgery. So it could change some things. However, they decided to part ways with Kim Ng yesterday. More specifically, Kim Ng decided to part ways with the organization. This comes from The Athletic. Kim Ng and owner Bruce Sherman, who sources close to The Athletic say is a huge proponent of analytics, I like how that's just kind of thrown in here, had differing ideas regarding personnel decisions and where some of the team's resources should be allotted this offseason, end quote. Alex, I don't know how you can have massive disagreements with where their resources should be allotted. The Marlins have a very clear need. They're terrible offensively, and they have a ton of pitching. So what do? Well, you go out there and you acquire offensive pieces. I think the question really here to be asked is not what are the personnel decisions, it's how do you acquire it? My guess is Kim Ng said, hey, I need money to be able to go pay for these position players that we need to acquire because we've got all the pitching we could ask for. We need to keep it. Look at the teams that are winning right now. Look at the Rangers, for example. They have like 12 starting pitchers that they used this year. We're going to need a lot of starters over the next couple of years. Let's keep them and pay for our position players. And Bruce Sherman said, yeah, no, we're not spending money. And Kim Ng said, okay, then I'm going to go ahead and leave and take my services elsewhere because if that's the way that it's going to be here now that we're trying to win again, well, then it's very clear we have differing ideas of what the future of this organization should be. That could be good for the Cardinals.
It's great for the Cardinals.
Because if you've got a team that is going to be cheap, this is the exact type of organization the Cardinals have taken advantage of over the years. They have been the team that, on the position player side of things, the Cardinals have, go to the Rockies and say, hey, what about Nolan Arenado? They go to the Diamondbacks and say, hey, what about Paul Goldschmidt? They go to the Marlins and say, hey, Marcell Ozuna. Oh, that didn't work out quite as well. Matt Holliday, hey, can we get... They've got the opportunity and the wherewithal to go find the team that's going to be cheap to be able to acquire their position players. The Cardinals have plenty of position players to offer, and the Marlins have plenty of pitchers to offer.
Let's go down this path together.
Sure.
Because I'm with you. This is the prototypical Cardinals move that a team says, well, we don't want to spend money. Let's make a trade. Now, Cardinals fans, you're going to have to suck it up because you're going to have to trade something you don't want to trade.
I don't want to.
Well, guess what? You're not getting anybody for Richie Palacios. It's going to be...
I would not trade Richie Palacios.
That's true. Untouchable. You're right. Should have put him on that damn list. Damn it, Michael. Take the scuba gear off. Anyway, you're going to start with the Gormans. You'll go to the Donovans, the Newt Bars, probably end up with the Alec Burlesons. The key in all of this is the Miami Marlins have Skip Schumacher, and he's going to identify the player he wants rather than the player you want to get rid of. You're not making this deal with a Dylan Carlson. That's not how this works. Now, let's go down the path together. Because Sandy Alcantara, let's forget about it. Don't even bring it up. It's not going to happen.
And he's not pitching next year. So, yeah, I agree.
It's going to really come down to what do you want? Do you think you can get one of their top pieces? Like, are they going to be willing to move on from a Cabrera or a Perez? Because that's what's going to cost you more.
Perez is a definite no. I would be legitimately shocked. Like, you'd have to talk. We're talking adding Jordan Walker into the mix to be able to get Yuri Perez. It's not
agree.
happening.
So that's why I look at Cabrera, Luzardo, and who was the Sixto Sanchez. Rogers is the other one. So those 4 guys, those are the names you're looking at. There's tiers there. The tiers of like, okay, I'd like to really start at Cabrera and say like, this is the dude that would be towards the top of our rotation, and we build around it, and then kind of build yourself backwards of Luzardo, Rogers, Sanchez. But this is the type of deal that you call up and you say, what are you willing to move? Because if you're willing to move Cabrera, then let's really have a conversation.
See, I think Cabrera is actually the lowest man on this list that I would be going after.
Oh, really? I feel like he's the one that's got the most ace upside.
He potentially does, but right now he's the worst of
he
the
walks
bunch.
the world.
Yeah, he's got no command
Blake
whatsoever.
Snell.
Yeah, but I mean, he's got legit ace caliber stuff.
And Cabrera might eventually become that. He also could eventually become a reliever for you. Like we're trying to figure out exactly who this guy is right now. Whereas with, for example, Braxton Garrett, he's been a productive major league starter already. Threw 160 innings this year for the Marlins, and in those 160 innings, had a 3.6 ERA. Now, that being said, he also doesn't have great stuff. He throws like 91, 92 miles per hour, and he's just kind of an okay strikeout artist. You could go with the Trevor Rogers route. He didn't really pitch much this year, though, and next year you're hoping for a bounce-back campaign from him because he wasn't very good in 2022 when he last started. The big guy that you could go after from them is Jesus Luzardo, but that's going to cost you a lot. I mean, we're talking about Gorman plus because of the amount of control that Jesus Luzardo has, but he's a really good pitcher, man. So there's different tiers within this organization that you could go out there and try to acquire. I kind of like the idea of Edward Cabrera, honestly, but it requires you to go after Sonny Gray and Aaron Nola first. And then Cabrera is the cherry on the top. Kind of like when we were talking about Brian Wu. He's kind of in that range of, I don't know what this guy's going to be, but I think you can pencil him in for 20 starts for you next year, maybe 100 innings. And he's got the upside to be something that is maybe better than what you currently have available to you. He's like Zach Thompson plus, because he's got better stuff than Zach Thompson. He's got bigger questions than Zach Thompson, and the range of outcomes is really wide with him. He's a guy that I would definitely be considering because the cost I also don't think is going to be all that prohibitive. I think you could get him for like Dylan Carlson and a prospect or something like that.
Yeah, and if I'm the Cardinals, like as much as like Luzardo would be great because you could slot him in as like the number 2 and then you go sign Nola or Gray, I would prefer you go sign probably the top 2 guys if you're not going to trade. If you're going to trade for somebody that's not an ace, I would prefer you go like the Braxton Garrett route where he is the 5 that's got upside. Like he reminds me of what they hoped Jordan Hicks was going to become as a starter, where he walked the world, but they were hoping he'd get swing and miss, and he's a capable number 5 starter for you. And we know how that experiment went. Hicks ended up being a better bullpen arm than he was as a starter. So that's kind of how I view Cabrera. If you're going to trade for him, that's kind of the role I would expect him in. But if we're talking like trading Nolan Gorman, and that's the only piece that Miami wants for like a Luzardo, I'm sorry, but I'm out. I don't want Luzardo for that. I'd rather go sign my top 2 guys. I would much rather trade for a number 5 than from that Miami staff because Nolan Gorman, as we've seen, left-handed hitters are just mashing the baseball in this postseason. And Gorman can do what Schwarber does, which is at any given time just kill a fastball and put it up into the second deck and give you a run in the playoffs.
I think Edward Cabrera would be the guy that I would target because I love the idea of acquiring a guy that's got maybe not ace potential, but he can be a like number 2 starter for you in the playoffs, give you 5 innings, and he's just striking out the world. He's got real swing and miss stuff, man. Now, he has no idea where it's going whatsoever. But I would rather trade for Edward Cabrera than sign Blake Snell, for example. I would rather get in on the cheap for Cabrera where I'm betting on the upside, and it's going to come for, $2 million over the next couple of years, as opposed to signing Blake Snell, who's going to cost me $35 million, and I'm getting him on the back end of what Cabrera could potentially be over the next 5. I think it's unlikely Cabrera ever reaches the ceiling of what Blake Snell is. The idea of him becoming a future Cy Young candidate multiple times over in his career, unlikely. But can he be a guy that ends up striking out 30% of the batters that he faces with like a sub-4 ERA at some point over the next 2 or 3 years? I think that's definitely in his range of outcomes.
I think when you go with Cabrera, because you and I are on the same page, like I would be going for upside in a trade like this, and that's where you could really capitalize. But this does require you to still be aggressive and expensive and spend the money on the top guys. Because what Edward Cabrera is not is somebody that in a playoff series this upcoming season right now, I'm like, oh, bleep, I got to go up against this guy. Now, by the end of the season, when you get to the postseason, maybe he is that guy. But I still need to I can't go into the season and say we hope Cabrera can get there and Sonny Gray is there right now, because that's too reliant on one guy that's going to carry you to the promised land when you need multiple guys to do it.
And this is where it comes down to money.
Yes.
It comes down to what are you willing to spend? Because, like, how would you guys feel if the Cardinals decided this offseason to get Eduardo Rodriguez, Sonny Gray, and Edward Cabrera? That's the 3 additions that you make to the starting staff.
Say it again.
Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers, formerly with the Red Sox. He's a really good pitcher, but not anybody's definition of a number 1 starter.
Yeah.
Sonny Gray, he comes in, and you end up getting Edward Cabrera. So you trade for Cabrera. You didn't have to give up significant assets. Nolan Gorman is still here. Let's say they traded Burleson or you know what? They ended up trading Von Herrera for him, and then other pieces as well. So they get the back-end starter that's got upside, and then they sign 2 guys that are slotted in ahead of Miles Michaelis in your rotation. How does that make you feel?
I wouldn't mind it. It doesn't make me comfortable. Like in a playoff series, Sonny Gray and Eduardo Rodriguez, I'm not feeling confident like I would have elsewhere. So, I mean, I'm fine. Like, I think it's a good offseason. I don't think it's a great offseason. I'd give it like a B-. Because you got upside, you got potential, you've got the guy that you're relying on to be the top dog in Sonny Gray, and you're hoping that you can do what Texas did with Nathan Eovaldi with Edward Rodriguez. It still doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies of this is a contender.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I like that offseason. I like Sonny Gray. Like, that's the part of the offseason I like. Yep. But
I'm trying to think of who's going to be the pitcher.
Because, like, I look at Rodriguez.
Falls through the cracks a little bit, like Eduardo Rodriguez, where he gets $20 million a year. So you sign 2 guys that are at $20 million a year instead of one that's at 35 with Aaron Nola in this example. And I think it allows you to then potentially go to your bullpen and help that out a little bit too.
Yeah, I have serious concern about Rodriguez. Because I think he's a good pitcher, but is he a playoff pitcher? Like, I just looked up his postseason numbers. No bueno. They're not very good. Now, they are a little bit better since he's been moved to a starter, so maybe it was when he was in the bullpen that he really struggled, that elevated those numbers. But you mentioned the idea of, like, you'd much rather have Cabrera over Snell. I'd rather have Snell because I know it's guaranteed that that's ace stuff, and I know that the dollar figure is higher. But I could be giving up not something significant, but a Von Herrera, like, that's a decent piece. That guy could end up being an everyday starting caliber catcher, and you give him up, and you end up with a guy that becomes maybe a bullpen arm. Like, I haven't seen enough from Cabrera for me to say, yeah, let's make him part of the offseason plan, and let's trade for him.
I would find this compelling. I don't know that it's not an A+. That would require... I mean, I think your A+ offseason starts with Aaron Nola, Sonny Gray, and let's see what happens.
Or Yamamoto.
Yeah. Well, it requires one of those legit number 1 starters. I mean, even if you wanted to include Blake Snell, that is a risky-ass move, but it could end up working out for you really well. I think that's how you get an A+ grade going into the offseason. I think this could be a B.
I'd give it a B- because you got upside, you've got like legit stuff, and you've got somebody you're really hoping to capitalize on.
Eduardo Rodriguez has been a front-end starter in his career. Last year, over the last 2 seasons, Sonny Gray's had a 2.9 ERA. Edward Cabrera has the potential to strike out 30% of the batters that he faces next year. Like, you upgraded your pitching staff in a way that is meaningful if this is the route that you decide to go, and you did so within the constraints of your budget, which I know nobody wants to hear it, but they will still have some kind of a budget going into the offseason. And you probably were then able to add 1 or 2 bullpen pieces as well, and you didn't trade away significant assets from your offense. I could see how this actually ends up working out really well for them. There's a case to be made on that. It's just not a sexy offseason by any stretch of the imagination. This is nobody's definition of getting people excited for 2024. But what will get them excited is if it works and they win. Oh. Coming up next, let's dive into the junk drawer here on 101 ESPN. Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, I got to get your help.
Uh-oh.
I got to get your help.
I don't know if you want my help.
So, last night, I go to sleep. Baby boy wakes up. It's about 1:30, right? We think he's hungry. That's typically around the time when he gets his first overnight feed of the evening.
This is what BK heard in the other room.
Exactly. So, that actually is exactly where this story is going.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So 1:30, he wakes up. We're like, okay, he's ready to feed. And he decides, I'm not interested in feeding. Instead,
I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's what we hear. So we're like, all right, changing time.
Kid's like, oh, yeah, I've been waiting to get that one out.
That's
Thanks,
what I thought,
Dad.
too. That was also my impression.
Oh, until the diaper came off?
Yep.
And he said, I got more for you.
100%. It's
like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory.
And we get the diaper ready. We're getting ready to do the change, blah, blah, blah. One thing leads to another. Here comes a little bit more. All right, we're like, okay, no problem. We'll go ahead and get another diaper. That one's obviously not going to be used this time around. So we get the next diaper in. This is the third diaper. First one discarded. The second one was the one that we were replaced it with. Ready to go. Third diaper is in. Here we go again. Let's get a little bit more out.
God,
I'm like,
you guys got to be dropping thousands of dollars on diapers.
We're going to wait a little longer. Let's see if he's got anything left. He keeps going a little bit. At this point, we're like 5-10 minutes in.
What are you feeding this kid?
It's amazing. Breast milk.
Breast milk making you poop like crazy.
At this point, we're like probably 10 minutes in. I'm assuming, all right, he's got to be done now, right? We've been waiting.
Hold on. This kid pooped for 10 straight minutes?
Well, not consecutively, but yeah, like spurts over the course of 10 minutes, literally.
Is the breast
So
milk
then,
bad?
we get the next one under him. This is number 4. Buddy. This was a fountain. I mean, it might as well have been, you know, the little boy that looks like he's peeing from the fountain? That's what his booty looks like. It is straight
Do you ever
up.
consider just starting to train him on potty training and just put him on the toilet and let him go? Because after all these damn diapers, I'm like, man, this is 4 diapers.
5 diapers in. We have finally secured the bag. He's good to go, ready to go back to sleep. He's like, oh, I feel great. Never felt any
I would
better.
imagine he just deuced out his entire day's worth of food.
Dude, what am I going to do? I can't afford this anymore.
Yeah, man, diapers are... You might want to consider the cloth diaper route. Just buy 5 or 6 of them.
I was looking at Kara like,
Why did you cover it with the... Like, didn't you have like a towel or something? That's like, dude, if you're going to keep pooping, just poop in this towel.
well, we had full diapers.
But what I'm saying is, like, if it's consistent poop, I'm going to be like, okay, screw the diaper, kid. Here's a towel. Poop on the towel.
We just kept going with the new diaper.
I mean, look,
somebody
man.
said his lactose intolerance
is
is
he?
an issue. No, he is fine. He's very regular.
I don't know if he's pooping for 10 straight minutes. When I poop for
Again,
10
it
straight minutes,
wasn't-
I got to cut back on the ice cream.
It wasn't as if it was a 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm counting over here as it's continuously coming out of his, you know. It was a
Poop shooter.
over the course of a 10-minute stretch, there were spurts where it was coming out. And now I'm 5 diapers in, and I'm thinking to myself over here, man, that was like $10.
Hey.
that was like $10.
Dude,
for
there's
that
nothing
overnight.
more depressing than watching the amount of diapers you throw away in a daytime. Like, because my daughter's like, when they get full, they get uncomfortable. And like, Adelaide's at that age now where we're potty training her, so she tries to rip her
Dude,
diaper
I'm
off.
ready. He's 3 months old. It's time, dude. Either get a job or get
For how
potty
long
trained.
she's
Those are
pooping, I would
options.
say go put them over the toilet. Wait till you do bath time, though, and they like do it themselves. Because I'm in the stage now where they're both in the bathtub and one drops the deuce and the other one's like, ew, sissy pooped. And then so they both got to get out of the damn bathtub. I'm like, just sit in the bathtub with the poop. It'll go down the drain. It's fine.
That sounds fantastic. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't
I'm
wait.
just telling you, man, you guys just start better doubling up on the diapers when you go to the store. Just 1 box? Nah, I should probably get 2.
Somebody said BK's going to have to cancel one of his 6-week Disney vacations soon.
He'll never do that.
Or I'd just look at him and I'd say, look, kid, just poop in this diaper. Fill that sucker up because then I'll change.
Somebody said, why are you guys both getting up at the same time in the middle of the night with him? Got to split that up, dude.
No
Yeah,
way.
That was the plan. We were...
Nah.
BK panicked.
This is typically a Kara goes to get him.
Everywhere.
She had changed the first diaper and was getting ready to go wash her hands when I showed up for the second diaper, and then all hell broke loose.
See, we didn't do that, man. I just woke because Katie would typically get up, and I'd just wake up with her because I felt that.
Yeah, there is some sympathy going on there.
No, there'd be sometimes where I just lay on the carpet while she's feeding and sleeping, and she'd be like, thanks for staying up with me. I'm like, yeah, you're welcome. Let's go back to bed.
Coming up next, let's talk to Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. What did he make of the skirmish that took place today between Jordan Kyrou and Braden Shin? We'll ask JR next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you always love it when there's a little bit of physicality taking place at Blues practice in the morning, and that is apparently what happens today, according to Jeremy Rutherford. Shin and Kyrou got into it during a drill. Quote, didn't last long, wasn't a fight, but it was definitely a scrum between the two. Jeremy Rutherford joins us now here on 101 ESPN. JR, what'd you see between Shin and Kyrou today?
Yeah, just kind of caught the tail end of it. The Blues came back. They're switching rinks today, and they moved to the other rink. And it was kind of in the corner, just a hard battle drill. And all of a sudden you see Shen and Kyrou just kind of pushing and shoving. This wasn't the fight from 2019 where Bortuzzo and Sanford are trading blows. Well, I guess I should say Bortuzzo was trading blows anyway. And but a situation that was over quick, and like I tried to describe it, I mean, those are tough situations because you don't want to make it more than it is. But I felt like, the way I described it, it wasn't a fight. It was just a scrum. And then, by the way, we have to say this. It was about 10 minutes later they were in another drill, and they were chatting and smiling and talking. So I guess that's hockey. We talked to Craig Berube about it afterwards, and, hey, I want them to play hard. I want them to practice hard. Good for them.
Cool, JR. So thanks for ruining our hopes of a Stanley Cup coming in 2024 because that's what the comparison I made, and you just shot it down immediately.
Well, it's funny because I was on press row there at practice, and as I tweeted it, I said 3, 2, 1, here come the Stanley Cup predictions, and then I saw your tweet, Alex.
Yep, you nailed it. But I do think that it is something, JR, because I told BK and Tanner when we saw your tweet, like, Ryan O'Reilly's not doing that. Ryan O'Reilly, and it's no shot against him, he's pulling Kyrou to the side and talking with him about it, whereas Braden Shen is more of the physical presence. He's going to make sure it was known. And I brought up the Backus Tarasenko scenario that was back in, 2016. This is why you named Braden Shen captain, correct?
I agree 100%, and I have all the respect in the world for Ryan O'Reilly, but that definitely would have been a post-practice chat. Might have been some tea involved. They probably would have had the napkins on their laps and chatting about it. But this was definitely a different situation. And I think, Alex, this is why people envision Braden Shen as the captain. He's not going to put up with anything. And I knew as soon as you include Jordan Kyrou's name in a skirmish like that, everybody's going to take it to mean that he's not holding up his end of the bargain, which quite possibly could have been the case. We don't know the specifics of this situation, but definitely Shen's a guy like Backus did with Tarasenko. He's going to take things into his own hands.
We're talking to Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic. You can find his work there. You can also follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford, where you'll see reports like what we got from him earlier today before they are over at The Athletic. JR, the other piece of news coming out of today's morning skate, it's kind of as expected, but Toropchenko moves up to that line with Shin and Kapanen. You've got Neighbors continuing to be on the fourth line. Alexandrov joins him and Sonny. What'd you make of Toropchenko being the one that got the call up to that second line?
Yeah, I like it, and we just talked to Craig Berube about that. I think it's twofold. One, they really like Saad with Thomas and Kyrou. They've had some time together. I think the other night they had about a 65% goal share for the analytic people. But I think that in terms of Toropchenko going on that second line with Shen and Kapanen, what Craig Berube said, I believe to be the case is Toropchenko's earned it. He's skating hard. He's playing hard. How about that back check we saw from him the other night, breaking up that opportunity by Jaden Schwartz? He's hitting everything he sees, and he said that's going to be a hard line to play against. The other thing I think factors into this is you don't want to be moving too many guys around. They obviously had a plan in camp. Neighbors is an identity guy in their eye right now, and they want to keep him on that fourth line. Even though Toropchenko comes from the fourth line, he's a guy that you can plug up there. Like Berube said, he's earned it. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like Buchnevich, I tweeted yesterday, out 1 to 2 weeks. Craig Berube said today, day-to-day, but he's not going to get back on the ice until the soreness goes away, and that could be a couple games. So we'll see, but this is the plan for now with Saad and Toropchenko.
On the offensive side, JR, an emphasis, I would imagine, is getting more pucks on net rather than around the net, because there have been a lot of shots that have missed the net, and for this offense that seems to has bought into what Craig Berube wants in terms of going to the front of the net and going for those rebounds, is that an area that he's not pleased with, of missing the net as much?
Yeah, a couple things on that. I'm working on a story that kind of breaks down what's going on defensively and how well they've played defensively. And a part of this story, Alex, is the focus on defense limiting what they're doing offensively. So I asked Craig Berube that question, and he said, no, I don't think so. Actually, I just think that the opportunities that we've had in the offensive zone when we do get possession, just things are going wrong, whether it be missing a shot like we've seen, or they're fumbling a puck, or a pass doesn't connect. It's just they've had the opportunities offensively to do more, even though they're putting this strong emphasis on the D, but they just haven't executed in the offensive zone with those opportunities. And obviously, you bring up missed shots. That's been a huge part of this.
JR, what's going on with the power play?
Yeah, good one.
Nothing.
I got to go now, boys.
Sorry, I'm losing bridge.
yeah, it's tough to watch. It really is, and we could spend 30 seconds on the answer, but honestly, this is what it boils down to. It just doesn't look like there's any confidence. Obviously, the team's not scoring, but typically the power play is when you get those good touches and you feel good about what you're doing, you put the puck in, and then it kind of translates to 5-on-5. Well, they can't even get the power play going right now. I mean, to me, it just all starts with being confident with the puck, moving it, being predictable amongst each other. Look, we watch it every day in practice, and they move fine. I realize the Blues PK knows what they're doing and so on and so forth, but it looks pretty smooth in practice, but they get out there against a pretty aggressive Dallas PK. It didn't look good, and you think, okay, maybe that's a hiccup. It'll look better against Seattle, and I think it looked worse. So, they're just going to have to stick to it and keep working. It's only 2 games. I was talking to Robert Thomas today. Hey, look, in 2 weeks, you might forget about these 2 games and things look a lot different. But right now, it's pretty ugly to watch.
Can they gain confidence back with the power play, JR? Because it's not like this is just a 2-game sample size. We saw this from all the way back to last season.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, you can connect the two. It looks like last year. There are some different personnel, obviously. I think 2 games is a small sample size, as ugly as it's been. I think if we start to see the same thing 3-4 games, they're going to have to do something, which to me it's going to be, changing the personnel. But right now you've loaded up on one group, and the other group is obviously your second power play unit. So what can you do? I don't know. You can balance it. Just try to find some chemistry. But to me, it's not a chemistry issue right now. It's making simple plays to set the next guy up so that they can move the puck quick and catch the PK off guard and score some goals. And until they do that, it doesn't look like it's going anywhere.
JR, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us after the Blues morning skate. Enjoy yourself out there. We'll talk with you again soon ahead of the Blues Thursday night matchup against the Coyotes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take it easy. That's Jeremy Rutherford joining us as he does each and every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario, breaking down everything that he saw out there at morning skate. Alex, do you think there's any chance that we see Scott Perunovich sooner rather than later if these power play issues continue?
Man, I thought that there was a chance that we could see him on Thursday, mostly because you haven't really been generating offense, and I mean, he's a guy that's offensively inclined. So it makes sense that he's not, and maybe something changes. But, I mean, your defense has been playing well. You've allowed 2 goals so far through 2 games. So I understand what they're trying to accomplish. But, yeah, I mean, if the power play before Perunovich goes in, they'll move around the units, which means Kyrou and Thomas won't be on that top unit. What I could see happening is Shen, one of Kyrou or Thomas, and then you put Verana and a Sammy Blais up on the number 1 unit and try and spread the wealth. But, I mean, look, if you don't have confidence right now after working on it in preseason and going into a couple of games, I'm not sure you're going to get confidence, which means you're going to have to switch it up.
Hey, the Fast Lane's going to be broadcasting this Friday from 2 to 6 o'clock at the River City Casino and Hotel, as later that evening, the inaugural Blues Warriors Awards Gala will be taking place. Enjoy an evening of dinner, drinks, awards, a live auction, and more with Jamie Rivers, Chris Kerber, Reed Lowe, Cam Jansen, Tony Twist, and so much more. Tickets for the Blues Warrior Awards Gala are on sale now, supporting the Blues Warrior Hockey. Get all the details at 101ESPN.com. Coming up next, let's play a game. Playoffs or picks? Are these 500 teams going to be talking about the playoffs or their draft picks as they get closer to the end of the season? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my dentist, 100 West Dental. And look, I love going to the dentist. I didn't before, but it's changed once I went to 100 West Dental, mostly because of the nightmare I've lived in the past with my dentist. Somebody I was going to religiously, and I find out that he's doing and missing some problems, doesn't do some x-rays. Next thing I know, I got a tumor and 7 teeth removed. That's not the case with 100 West Dental. Look, they are all about the preventative procedure. It's easy, it's simple, and the best part about it is they're focused on the long run of your health, not just the short term of if your teeth are clean or not. It's your mouth, it's your teeth, it's your gums, it's your overall health. They're always on top of that. It's got the most modern technology. Patient experience is at the front of mind. The best part about it is it's super simple to get an appointment. You can book online. If you want, you can have a virtual consultation with the doctor. On top of that, the scheduling means you don't have to give anybody a call and schedule. You just go on, check your calendar, book it online, and go from there. 100westdental.com. Make sure you make the right decision. 636-585-0100. 100 West Dental.
It seems like half the NFL at this point of the season is at 500. 3-3 so far this year. So let's break it down, Alex. Are they going to be talking about the playoffs or their draft picks by the time that we get to December? Let's go through some of these, Alex. The New York Jets, 3-3 on the season. Huge win this week for them. Are they going to be talking playoffs or picks by the time we get to the end of the season?
I think they'll be talking playoffs. I mean, when I look at the 3-3 teams, Colts, so they don't have a quarterback anymore. Don't try and sell me on Gardner Minshew. Texans, I think, have outperformed what their expectations were. Bengals look like a lost puppy right now. Raiders don't deserve to be there. Frankly, I think the Jets' defense is good enough to make them a playoff team. So, I mean, picks don't do them any justice right now, because you're hoping that you can win right now and next season with this Aaron Rodgers trade, and who knows if he comes back. BK doesn't think he's going to. I think their defense is good enough to get them into the playoffs, so I'll say playoffs.
I'm saying playoffs, too. I think the defense is good enough, and I think you've seen signs that Zach Wilson, though not a top 10 quarterback, can be a game manager for the Jets. And Breece Hall is starting to break out, which is a good sign for them. If Breece Hall was kind of struggling or looked like the first week of the season where it was kind of split between him and Dalvin Cook, I'd have concerns. But I think the defense is good enough. I think Zach Wilson can do just enough to get them into the playoffs.
I'm saying playoffs as well because of the defense. I was thinking about this the other day. There's not a whole lot of individual units that I would consider to be elite, not just based on what they've done in 2023, but relative to recent seasons, right? I think the Jets defense is legitimately elite. I think the Dolphins' offense is elite. Other than that, maybe you could argue like the 49ers
I'd
defense,
say Browns
the Browns
defense is
defense.
Yeah.
I think there's only one elite offense in the league right now, and it's the Dolphins. So if I believe that, I'm probably going to lean on some of the elite level defenses, and the Jets have one of those. So I'll say they're focusing on the playoffs. I do think it's going to be a scratch and claw situation, though, to be able to get there. The next team up, we've gone back and forth on them so far this season. The Cincinnati Bengals, 3-3, big time win over the weekend. Not particularly impressive offensively, but a big win against the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to be talking picks or playoffs by the end of the year in Cincinnati, Alex.
I think they're still going to be talking playoffs, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I think they should be talking picks. But, I mean, when you have Joe Burrow, when you have Jamar Chase, when you have Joe Mixon, you're going to be probably like an 8 to 10 win team, which is probably going to get you into one of those wild card teams. I just don't see you falling out enough to where you're talking about picks. But again, I think you should be talking about picks if you're the Bengals.
Have you looked at their next 6 weeks? So they're on their bye this upcoming week. At San Francisco, home for Buffalo, home for Houston, which is not a gimme at this point, at Baltimore, home for Pittsburgh, and then at Jacksonville.
Yeah.
You're
Still think you'd probably pull 3 wins out in that.
I think that's the hope. I think you get to 3-3. If you are at 500 by the end of that stretch, I think they're probably making the playoffs with 10 wins this year.
If I'm them,
but it's getting to those 6 wins at that point in the season.
If I'm them, I'm just going to. When's the trade deadline? Is it week 8, week 10?
It's something like that. I'll have to look it up.
I'm regardless of what my expectations are this season, I'm considering trading T. Higgins just to get something in return, because obviously now I know he's been injured, but when he was healthy, it wasn't working.
October 31st.
So maybe
weeks.
you can
They've
get
only
some
got
picks.
one more game before then.
I
would not trade him, because if I'm the Bengals, I'm all in every year that I've got Joe Burrow. I'm not trading an asset that if the Bengals get into the playoffs, they can win the Super Bowl. Flat out. Because they have Joe Burrow, and that means you've got a chance, man. So I would not trade anybody from my current team. I would be trying to add. Yeah. I'd be trying to add something to this team, probably on the defensive side of the ball, if I'm being totally honest with you, because I want to continue adding pieces for Lou Anarumo to be able to work with over the course of the season. Their defense is why they've won the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'd say playoffs, because I don't think you can say picks with Joe Burrow. I think I don't want to say you have to be all in all the time with Joe Burrow.
You can say picks with Joe Burrow. It's the interceptions.
There's no time for picks if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Joe Burrow, with him at quarterback being a top 10 quarterback in the league, you got to go all in. So I would not trade Higgins. I mean, last year they started 4-4. And now the schedule not as tough as it's going to be coming up, but they started 4-4. They went on a run, and they were a massive threat in the AFC playoffs.
All right, next one up, another team that's on the bye this week. It is the Houston Texans, 3-3 so far. I mentioned they're no longer a gimme. I think they're a really solid football team. Decent defense, got a couple of guys that are starting to step up in a big way. I think they're really well coached. I like their offensive coordinator, what he's done with the offense, and most importantly, if you're a Texans fan, you got a quarterback, man. CJ Stroud is really good. Alex, you said all draft season, he's your guy. He's the one that you would be taking number 1 overall. You never understood the talk about Bryce Young over him. You thought the Anthony Richardson stuff was great. CJ Stroud is your guy. Well, you've been made to look very smart so far this year, because he looks awesome. I would say he's been playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league so far this year. CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans, are they going to be talking about picks or playoffs by the time we get to the end of the regular season?
I think they're going to be talking about playoffs, because you're 1 game less than Jacksonville. You already beat them head-to-head in their schedule. I mean, you've got the Panthers next, then the Bucks, then the Bengals, then the Cardinals, then the Jaguars again, then the Broncos. I mean, I could legitimately see them being competitive in almost all of those games, specifically that Jacksonville game. And if you do, you'll be the top dog in the AFC South. So I'm going to say playoffs.
I don't see a single game on their schedule that they can't win. The problem for them is...
Browns one I'd be a little concerned about.
Maybe,
just
but like
the
Deshaun
defense.
Watson's probably going to be playing. He's going to throw him 7 interceptions, so whatever. But I'm with you.
Wow.
I'm so out on Deshaun Watson and this Browns team.
Just 'cause he's
that
on this
defense
fantasy
deserves
team.
better, man. That defense deserves better from them. They should be a team that ended...
They got P.J. Walker.
He's better. They should be sticking with P.J. Walker. Alas, here we are. The problem for the Texans is that there also aren't very many gimmies on their schedule remaining. I think they have a real shot to be able to win 10. I'm going to say playoffs for them, but even if they don't make the playoffs, this season has been such a massive success for them that they should be thrilled with the results that they've gotten thus far. There's real hope.
It was well worth them trading that other pick so that they could get the top one with Will Anderson.
Yeah.
Especially if you win 10 games, man. I mean, the pick's not going to hurt you like it would have if you would have been awful this year.
I still don't know if it was good process, but it's worked out better than I expected it to at that point.
I say playoffs for them too, because though you said there's not a gimme on the schedule, there's also not a game in which it's like, man, they really need to pull off an upset if they're going to get to 10 wins. Because like you said, all those games are like 50-50. If you've beaten Jacksonville once, you can beat them again.
Absolutely.
And as we've seen, if the Bengals don't get it figured out, they're beatable on the road.
Next one up, let's go over to the NFC side of things. The team that I've been backing all year long, that I'm ready to get off their bandwagon. The Atlanta Falcons. Playoffs or picks, boys?
Picks. And the pick should be a damn quarterback. Because I don't know how you can sit there and act like Desmond Ridder is taking us to the... You've got all the weapons. You've got Drake London. You've got Kyle Pitts. You've got an offensive line that BK's like, man, their offensive line is great.
It is. It's good.
Yeah, well, your quarterback sucks.
Yep.
So go get a quarterback. You should be focused on picks right now.
Where's the Atlanta media now that was going, well, it's sound process not to go after Lamar because Desmond Ridder's the guy.
Yeah.
It never made any sense.
No.
Everything about this team screamed, hey, if we get a quarterback in here, especially with the division that's around, imagine if they had, even if it's not Lamar, just
Justin
like
Fields.
a capable NFL starting quarterback. Sure. Whoever your guy
Rivers.
is that you want. Hell, if they had gone out and got Jacoby Brissett this offseason, who is a capable starter, not great, but capable, Gardner Minshew, capable. This team would probably go 10-7, 11-6 this year, and would clearly be the best in the NFC South. Unfortunately, they have Desmond Ridder, which means they are not going to be talking about the playoffs and will probably be talking about their picks. And it has to be a quarterback. Here's the problem. They're too good to get a top 5 pick. So you're going to end up picking like 8th or 9th.
Maybe better make a trade.
Sure, but if I'm one of the top 3 teams, I'm not trading out of a pick to get Caleb Williams or Drake May.
Can I interest you in Desmond Ridder?
They're going to end up with like Shador Sanders or...
I'd take him.
He's fine.
Yeah.
I have no idea what he's going to be in the future. Or Michael Penix Jr., who, like, I have no idea how he projects to be an NFL caliber quarterback.
Shador couldn't beat, Stanford.
It's just
a tree.
There is not a sure thing after the top 2 picks in this year's draft. And even then, it's risky, but the risk becomes even more extreme after those 2. So I was bullish on the Falcons this year because I thought maybe Ridder could be a capable game manager. Bro.
Yeah,
sir.
Not so much.
All right, next one up. New Orleans Saints. Picks or playoffs? Somebody has to make it to the playoffs from this dreadful division.
Yeah, I think they're going to be picks too.
What happened to Derek Carr?
He's
arguing with the offensive coordinator on the sideline. Be like, that's the reason you're bad.
I don't know what happened to Carr. I don't know if it's still the shoulder injury. Remember, he did suffer that AC joint sprain, and I think that's right. Something with his shoulder. I'm not a doctor, but I wonder if that's part of the issues. But even before then, like, he didn't play well when he was healthy. So I'm not going to completely buy in on he's injured right now. I don't know. I can't figure out what's wrong offensively with them. I like the defense. I think the defense has been solid, but offensively they're just not doing it for me. I think Tampa Bay's going to win that division.
I do too.
I'm not saying it's going to be a pretty win the division.
I think you're probably right.
It might be like 9-8
team of the groups of
Agreed.
A group of team, and
it's because their defense though. It's not because of shaky bakey.
Oh, 100%.
Whoa.
Baker has been
Let him bake.
passable so far this year, which is better than what you've seen from Ridder, and their defense I think is a little better than what you're seeing from the Saints.
I actually think we have a clear picture of the playoffs right now in the NFC. Eagles, Cowboys. 3 teams in the NFC West with the Niners, Seahawks, Rams, Lions, Bucks, and then pick your poison on the last crappy team that gets in. That's what I think the NFC is. Like the AFC, where we thought the AFC was going to be a clear picture, AFC is the one that I can make an argument for like 5 or 6 teams. Well, the NFC's awful.
You just answered the question for the final one.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. The LA Rams, picks or playoffs?
Playoffs. And even if they had picks, F them picks. Am I right, boys?
They don't have picks.
Do they have their first
They
round?
do have their first round.
Do they? Oh, that is 100% being traded at the deadline.
Tell you who I think they're going to target.
Brian Burns.
Yeah, they had interest in him last year. Do not be surprised if Brian Burns is an LA Ram by the end of the year.
Absolutely
Not just the 2024 first,
Any 34
first.
We don't want it.
Bleep these picks, boys.
Yeah, I say playoffs because I kind of agree with you. And it's not so much that I think like they are a really good playoff caliber team,
but they're the best of the rest.
Yeah, they're the best of the rest, and they're going to probably go 9-8 or 10-7 and make the playoffs.
I'm saying playoffs. Yes. Dude, Matt Stafford's really good. I don't know why we do this, but I feel like for most of Matt Stafford's career, we have underrated how good he is. That guy is awesome, man. And he's playing really well once again this year. I just think between him playing well again, the coach seemingly being interested in coaching football again, and the defense playing really well under Raheem Morris, who deserves more conversation about being a future head coach once again, I think this team's going to end up making the playoffs this year. I've got the Rams as the playoffs, not the picks. So we had the Saints and the Falcons as the 3-3 teams that are going to be talking picks, and every other 3-3 team, the Jets, Bengals, Texans, and the Rams, talking about the playoffs by the time we get to the end of the
playoff
season.
format. Everybody gets in.
How come we didn't mention Washington?
Well,
Can we
BK,
go
you want to back
picks?
Sam Howell?
We all agree picks.
Yeah.
No, they got the quarterback, right?
Same
BK?
reason I didn't mention the Raiders. We all agree picks.
I didn't even know the Raiders were 3-3.
I was giving them more respect than the
The
Raiders.
Colts picks.
I also do. Well, that's obvious.
got a
If they had
quarterback
Richardson,
injury.
I probably would have said playoff team.
Yeah, I agree. We would
But
have had a
not
conversation
Thor.
about him if Richardson wasn't out the rest of the year.
I just
But
didn't
he
like.
is.
I didn't like the disrespect.
Well,
to
Sam Howell,
Washington.
let's be honest, deserves the disrespect.
I mean, if we're
Of
gonna,
those three teams that I just mentioned, Colts, Washington, and who was the third?
the Raiders.
The Raiders. Who's most likely to make the playoffs?
I'd say the Raiders.
Colts, Washington, and the Raiders.
I'd say the Colts.
I think so too.
Because I think you got Gardner Minshew, who, like you just said about the Falcons, you have a quarterback that's at least capable of starting. And, the defense plays well. I can kind of squint and see how they back their way into the playoffs.
Raiders still have 2 games against Kansas City. They're on the road against Miami. They've got Detroit on the road as well. They've got to take on the Jets.
Jimmy G keeps getting hurt.
Yeah, they're done. They stink. Stink. Coming up next.
Whoa.
The Cardinals bullpen wasn't great this year. How
Stink.
do they improve this going into the offseason? Let's take a look at the current teams that are still participating to find out what the formula looks like here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. So your home has made you equity rich on paper, and you're planning to use that cash to retire, travel, maybe you just want to downsize, get into a new place that's already paid off. Good for you. But the longer that you wait, the greater the chance that these higher interest rates could chip away your home's value. While that value remains high, the time to act is right now, and you should act with Truehold. They'll buy your home for its best current value, and you can stay in it for as long as you'd like. You'll be able to make all of the cash and do with it whatever you would like. Truehold will take care of your property taxes, the insurance, all of the upkeep as well. Do not miss out on this opportunity to cash in on your equity and stay in your home for as long as you'd like as a renter. To do so, visit Truehold.com and you'll discover how much they'll buy your home for today based on its best current value and not what's coming. Call 1-855-300-9993 or visit them at Truehold.com for the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's Truehold.com.
When it comes to flavor, more is always more. And McDonald's is serving up more for less when you order yourself a delicious triple cheeseburger for just $2.99. Take a bite of 3 stacked patties made with 100% pure beef, seasoned with a touch of salt and pepper, and topped with tangy pickles, chopped onions, ketchup, mustard, and 2 slices of that classic melty American cheese. Like I said, more is more, so get more of the faves you love only at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Prices and participation may vary, cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Budgeting for your business in 2024? Does your phone system need a refresh? Call the team at Mastor. For more than 30 years, we've been helping businesses like yours. Call us today at 314-997-9007 or visit mastor.com.
ESPN Sports Center.
Terry here, the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Rangers took Game 2 over the Astros yesterday, 5-4, as they lead that series 2-0. And then Game 1 of the NLCS last night, the Phillies beat the Diamondbacks 5-3, and you can hear Game 2 of that series here on 101 ESPN tonight. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6:30, and then on Thursday we'll have Blues versus the Coyotes with pregame coverage starting at 6 with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale, and then puck drop at 7 with Joey and Chris Gerber. This Sports Center update was brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, so we talk a lot about the Cardinals' rotation going into the offseason. We probably don't spend enough time talking about the bullpen, because if you're watching the postseason right now, man, what the Astros, the Phillies have available to them, specifically in those bullpens, it is hard to string together any sort of consistent offense once you get to the back end of their pens. The Cardinals didn't have that as a luxury for them this past season. In fact, the bullpen was a big part of the problem, especially early on as they got through, 10-24 early on in the season. It's not what you were looking for. Well, going into the offseason, you've got Gio coming back. You've got Helsley coming back. We like what we have with JoJo Romero. Other than that, man, I've got a lot of questions about what the bullpen's going to look like going into next year. So, Alex, I wanted to look at, how are these bullpens constructed for the teams that currently remain? The Diamondbacks basically spend no money whatsoever. They've got Miguel Castro. He's making $4 million. Every other pitcher in their bullpen right now makes less than $1.5 million.
T-Bone's dream right there.
So don't look to them as any kind of a formula on what the Cardinals could follow going into the offseason. They've already spent more on their bullpen than the Diamondbacks have committed. The Astros, however, $14 million on a contract to Ryan Presley. Rafael Montero, a guy that we talked about as a potential target for the Cardinals last offseason, $12 million a year. Hector Neris, $8 million. Kendall Graveman, $3 million. Mayton, $2.5 million. All right, that's more in the vein of kind of what we're potentially looking for the Cardinals. If you're looking at the Rangers, kind of more similar to what you had with the Diamondbacks, honestly. $6 million is their highest paid reliever, 4 after that, and then it's a bunch of guys that are $2 million or below. The Phillies are, I think, the formula for what the Cardinals could go out and do this offseason. They paid Craig Kimbrell $10 million. They've got Matt Strahm at $7.5 million, and then they've got 3 other dudes that are making between $3 and $4 million. That is that middle ground that I think the Cardinals could look to kind of emulate going into the offseason. I think you can bring in one dude that's making $10 million this offseason as a reliever for you. And then everything else probably needs to be a lower salary. And that guy needs to be somebody like a Craig Kimbrell that you can trust in big-time moments regardless of when you're putting him out there. I think that's what the Cardinals need to go out there and do for their pen.
So not bringing him in as the closer, bringing him in as one of those shutdown setup men.
I liked the way that Derek Gould put this last year, and they didn't really end up doing this, in my opinion, but he talked about how the Cardinals wants to acquire somebody that could close for them. And I think that's what they should do this year.
That was Drew Verhagen.
Bring in somebody that could close out a game for you if you needed him to. Like Jordan Hicks, if they decided to re-sign him this offseason, 3 years, $10 million per year, it's an overspend, but that's the kind of thing that I could get behind. If we're talking about going to the top of the market and getting Josh Hader, based on everything that these championship contending teams are doing, And based on what the Cardinals' payroll is likely to be, it just seems like an overspend to be able to take a sledgehammer to a problem that obviously was an issue for them, but I think it would require the Cardinals to spend very little on their starting additions this offseason, so I wouldn't go that route.
Yeah, well, and when I look at these free agents, Craig Kimbrell is the perfect one because Sean Manaea you're going to be paying more for. Will Smith you're going to be paying more for. Josh Hader you're absolutely paying more for. And then underneath that, you've got guys who I'm not sure if you feel comfortable, like Nick Martinez maybe you'd feel comfortable putting him in a spot where you'd have to close with them. I don't think I would feel comfortable with a Joe Kelly in that spot.
No.
So, yeah, I mean, it's odd that it's just Craig Kimbrell. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if you could get Craig Kimbrell because it's going to be tough to pry him away from the Phillies if he has success again this year.
I really think Jordan Hicks is honestly a good target for the Cardinals this offseason. I know that he was here already.
I feel like you need to move on.
The problem is, like, it's kind of the Jordan Montgomery conversation where, yes, it is best to move on, but also if that guy is the best player that is available, then just sign him.
But could you get the guy from overseas? Somebody brought up Matsui that was brought up by Derek Gould. Like, he's one of them. The other guy that I like, who I'm not sure how he finished the season, was Chad Green. He wasn't good in Toronto, I don't think, afterwards, but like a couple of years ago with the Yankees, he was that guy.
I don't think you need to go that low on the list.
I think Emilio Pagan's the guy. And I don't think he's that low on those. He's like kind of that mid-tier, I believe.
Reynaldo Lopez is an interesting name.
Yeah, but the reason I say Pagan, the reason I put Pagan on that list is because Pagan's closed before. Pagan has closed for the Minnesota Twins. He threw 2 shutout innings in his appearance in the playoffs with Minnesota. Like, he's the guy for me. He's the guy that he's only going to cost probably like $5 to $10 million. You can get him on like a 1-2 year deal. He's got closing experience before, and his stuff is filthy. He had a really good year this year. I just looked up his numbers to just reaffirm what I did earlier when I had the T-Bone 3, and I think he had an ERA under the 3s.
Yeah.
So, like, he's a guy that makes sense for the Cardinals. He's got swing and miss. It was a little bit down this year compared to what you're used to seeing. But he's the kind of guy that I would rather do. Go out and get a 1-2 year deal, $5 to $10 million. Pierce Johnson, he pitched for the Atlanta Braves. Was awesome when he was acquired from Colorado this year. Those are the guys that I'm talking about, that middle tier. I don't think they need to be shopping in that big top tier of, let's give out $10+ million or multiple years of $10+ million to a reliever. Like, I think that's what Hicks is going to command. I think he's going to get probably what was the Astros guy's name that I just draw a blank on that we talked about? Castro, who got the multi-year deal. Like
3 years, like $33 million.
Yeah, like, I wouldn't do that. I would look for a 1 year, maybe with a player option of $5 to $10 million a year for 2 guys that can be back-end bullpen arms that have swing and miss, and Pagan, who has closing experience.
I think what the Cardinals are going to have to decide this offseason, and all of these conversations are, by the way, related. Like, you've got to decide, okay, how do we want to go about this in terms of the slotting of the starters? Do we want to acquire our top starter that we get via trade and then get Sonny Gray and then spend a little bit on a number 5 starter? Or do we want to go out and spend on an Aaron Nola, trade for the number 2 guy that we're going to get, and then we'll see kind of how we piece things together with that back-end starter? How do we want to go about it there? And then I think that has a trickle-down effect on what they decide to do with their bullpen as well. Well, if you trade for the number 1, so you get Dylan Cease, and then you spend $20 million, let's say, on Sonny Gray, you go out and get a number 5 starter for $10 million. So you've spent $30 million total for your rotation. I think you could go out there and get 3 bullpen arms, Jordan Hicks, maybe like a Joe Jimenez and Pierce Johnson, and you've got enough money available to go around for all of those different things. But if you decide to go out and get an Aaron Nola, and maybe you sign Sonny Gray, well, now I'm probably going to have to either go to like the bargain bin free agent route for the bullpen, or I'm going to have to trade for my bullpen arms. So all of these things are related. Depending on what they decide to do with the rotation, which should be the priority, that will have a trickle-down effect on how much money and how many resources they have available to be able to spend on the bullpen arms. Joe Jimenez is another guy that I would throw into that conversation that you were discussing, T-Bone. Was with Atlanta this year, has been really good for them, had really good strikeout stuff, has his entire career, ended with a 3.0 ERA. Is it a guy that you want closing out every game for you? No, but he has closing experience. He has 20 career saves. So that's another guy in that $5 to $7 million range that I think you could throw into that category.
The question that I guess I have to ask, and this is just like from the Cardinals' perspective, is how much of these internal pieces do they view them as bullpen arms? Because that's really going to sway their decisions in terms of spending free agency.
I think you have to add 2 guys that you can put into the 7th inning or later mix.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, I think your bullpen's going to be a problem.
My worry is they're going to think JoJo Romero is one of those guys.
I think you
See,
should.
I think he can
have
be
no
thrown.
problem with
I think
that.
he can be thrown into that conversation, but I don't think you can plan on him.
Yeah, I don't think he's in that job. I'd get somebody who has that job, and Romero can steal that job.
Here's the thing. I think you have 3 guys right now on your roster that can be in that mix. I think it's Ryan Helsley, Giovanni Gallegos, and JoJo Romero.
But Helsley needs to be the elite closer. He can't even be in that conversation.
What I'm saying is, if you've only got 3 guys that can handle the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, that's not enough.
Yeah.
Over the course of the season, you're going to have a lot of days where Ryan Helsley's unavailable. And if he's not available, I need somebody else that can slot into that.
He should always be available.
So I need 5 guys that I can trust in the 7th inning or later over the course of the season. You right now have 3. That means you have to go out there and acquire 2. You don't have to spend top end of the market money, but you got to find a way to bring in guys that can fit into this mix that we're discussing. There's a lot of opportunities there. This is every year, there are so many relievers that signed 1-year contracts that they're going to be available. The market is flush with those guys. And if you don't want to go to the market, if you end up spending a bunch of cash on your number 1 and number 2 starters, which I have no problem with, that's totally fine. Well, then go trade some of your ancillary pieces from your position players. Go trade those guys for bullpen pieces that can help you right now. They're always available during the offseason. All right, coming up next, we'll have the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN. Been a good show today. If you missed any of it, check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto
If you missed it
Centers.
earlier today. I was optimistic about the Blues offense.
Yeah, okay. You were fake optimistic.
We talked a little bit more about how the Rangers can be the formula when it comes to the rotation for the Cardinals this offseason. T-Bone hated the suggestion that I had on what the Cardinals could do with their rotation. So you can find all of that at 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. You can also watch us on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. The studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. Alex, going into this upcoming stretch for the Blues, they're now going to be without Pavel Buchnevich for at least a little bit. Big takeaway from today's morning skate is that it's going to be Alexey Toropchenko on that second line. Your big picture thoughts on that move are what?
Berube's rewarding the player that's working hard. And this is exactly what we thought was going to be the season of Craig Berube not doing this. Like, he's developing, yes, but he's not doing the whole, well, let's give him every opportunity possible. I'm trying to win games. And the player that proves to be the one that's out there doing everything he can to help the team win is going to get that opportunity. It could be Jake Neighbors after Thursday night if he plays like Toropchenko did on the fourth line. But right now, Toropchenko's the one that's hitting, blocking shots, breaking up plays, playing the 200-foot game, and creating offense. So this is the reward from the head coach, Craig Berube. It's the dangling of the fruit in front of them or the food in front of them. Go get it. And if you show yourself worthy, then you're going to get these opportunities.
My biggest takeaway is it just shows Torp's earned it. And they're going to give that as much as I remember Ollie saying coming into spring training, it is a competition. We're going to reward guys for competition. That's what the Blues are doing. It's what the St. Louis Blues are doing. Torp's been better in the first two games, and you're not going to just force Jake Neighbors into that role. You'd like Jake Neighbors to be a top six forward, but he hasn't earned it yet. And until he earns it, he's going to continue skating on the fourth line.
I think they learned a lot from last year. Like last year, they put him into a role that he wasn't ready for. And this is not a shot against the organization. It was just where they were at. And they hoped that, okay, he's going to reach up to this potential based on us giving him the ice time. And now they're saying, go earn the ice time. And Toropchenko has earned that opportunity on that second role. I find it a little disappointing that Neighbors hasn't. But hey, man, no shot against him. Toropchenko has, Neighbors hasn't. It's the right move for winning the game on Thursday, and that's what the Blues are trying to do. All right, more on that as we go along here throughout the week. He's Alex, that's T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.